The Hazy Sea. Can your dreams hold the truth to a life long gone? An original story, wistfully conceived by Jordan Ferron. A big fan of Silent Hill when I was growing up, this story was built on a foundation of world building and atmosphere inspired by Team Silent and later Hideo Kojima and Guillermo del Toro. Elements of suspense, horror, and one certain character are thanks to them. Likewise, games by Atlus's Persona team taught me a lot about creating bonds between characters and spacing out a plot across a lengthy timeline and day-to-day schedule. Indie or faux indie games such as Life is Strange, Night in the Woods, Soma, Telltale Games' catalog, Amnesia: The Dark Descent, and Benjamin Rivers' Home, as well as anime movies A Silent Voice and favorites from Studio Ghibli also inspired me and kept me driven to write at various stages in my life. Finally, much love is due to all of my favorite alternative and indie musicians. This story was written to a soundtrack of music from Radiohead, Modest Mouse, Yeah Yeah Yeahs, and the many others I refer and pay homage to as I write these pages. With all this out of the way, the biggest of all thanks goes to whoever is listening to this now, and I hope you enjoy uncovering the mystery of Matthew Jefferson's past as much as I enjoyed writing about it. And, fair warning, this story is meant for mature audiences only. My writing contains vulgarity and use of slurs within relative context, numerous depictions of sensitive subject matter, including but not limited to depression, self-harm, suicide, bullying, manipulation, domestic abuse, parental neglect, mental illness, sexual content between minors, and pregnancy trauma, and strong, at times violently graphic, scenes of horror. With this disclosed and you still proceeding, I thank you for listening. Chapter 1. Reflection. A light, mystic fog blanketing a lonely coastline highway, I find myself traveling in the driver's seat of a car that I don't recognize. I don't even know how to drive. Never have before. But still, I grip the steering wheel and balance my foot on the gas pedal with comfort and ease. I drive for some time under an overcast sky, averaging about 50 miles an hour by my speedometer, with not another soul in sight. With no goal in mind or destination on the horizon, I steadily cruise along, enjoying this trip in solitary. A light tune is playing on the stereo, a weaker-than song. Endless fields of green grass and sparse trees lie to the right of my moving car, with morning dew appearing to set in. Opposite that is a deep, dark ocean, raucous and stormy, beyond a short, rocky cliffside and sandy beach to my left. A ways ahead that it's only a speck in the distance sits a lighthouse over the water, awaiting ships that may or may never come. The wind outside seems fairly strong, but not to the point of disrupting my driving. Where I actually am is unknown to me, but this weather seems something typical for a Pacific Northwest shoreline, even though I live quite a way away from any coast. How did I end up over here? How long have I been driving? Disturbing my lull, my eye catches a glimpse of some bright light shooting forward ahead of me in the sky above the beach, fast as a bolt of lightning. My peripherals caught it through fogged-over windows before it disappeared over the horizon ahead. I have no idea what it was I saw, but suddenly the air around me feels different, anxious as if a dormant danger is now shadowing me. Suspicious, I pull over onto the road's gravel shoulder to investigate. In a moment I exit the car, leaving the keys in the ignition and stuffing my hands into my jacket pockets after closing the door behind me. My brow furrows as I look both ways before crossing the highway toward the shady beach, halting where the gravel meets the grass. The chilling wind pushes against my back and I shiver. From the edge of the opposite shoulder, I peer down the short cliffside to the ocean, looking for anything strange or out of place. For as long as I remember driving on this road, I have not seen anyone else. Many miles I've traveled thus far, and any being that may have passed by just now is long gone. But if this highway is so desolate, why is it that I now feel uneasy? Am I being watched by someone or something? It's unnervingly quiet here. The waves thrash against the cliffs below like the anxiety in my head. Holding a calm outward complexion, though, I sense movement afoot, and my eyes find a lone flower in the tall grass before the cliff's edge. The white flower rustles around a bit in the wind before curling inward, hunching over, and its leaves almost clutching its stem as a human might do when feeling painfully sick. Seconds later, the daisy straightens out again, and a small blue-winged butterfly appears to emerge from within it. Flying at first, soon it struggles to stay airborne, helplessly flapping its wings as it falls and disappears back into the grass. My gaze returns to the ocean, looking out to where the water meets the sky. Minutes melt away as I stare out as deep as I can, analyzing the empty distance. I notice now the sky has an odd texture to it, grainy like old film. Soon, this grainy appearance overtakes all the scenery I see as if an antenna in my brain is losing its reception. I turn my back to the sea breeze and the flower that seemingly birthed a butterfly. I need to get out of here and find out where this road leads me. Something's not right with this beach. I board into the car I was driving again, turn the key, and start the engine. I shift out of park and get back up to speed, not once looking back to where I came from. Miles later down the highway, the grainy fog around me thickens to the point I lose sight of everything. I feel myself disappear. And even though I can no longer see anything, not the road ahead, not the ocean or the fields of grass, not me or the car I was driving, not the butterfly who never had a fair chance at life, even though all I can see is the nothingness of this grainy fog, I can still feel my presence in this void. Faintly, my eyes are drawn to where I make out the frame of the rear-view mirror when a flash of light appears within it, just like the one I saw bolting ahead in the sky just moments ago. Only this time, as I focus in on what the reflection shows, two distinct lights seem to manifest behind me, side by side like headlights. They approach and gain speed on my position fast. In a panic, I reach for my steering wheel and gas pedal, scrambling to get out of the way of the incoming and unseen vehicle, but it's in vain. Everything is now out of my reach, I find, and in time, my ability to move at all is lost, it feels. My fate is locked by the time the two lights in the rearview mirror enlarge and merge into one that blinds and consumes the whole thing, myself included. It catches up to me with a sudden and disturbing sound of mangling metal and shattering glass. All goes black, and I can't feel a thing. I can't feel a thing, but I'm still here. I'm not sure how much time has passed, or if I'm even driving anymore, but an apparition fades into view in front of me. Through black fog, illuminated by a solitary streetlight, I can see what looks like a young child, sporting an old worn and torn brown short suit, lying in a fetal position over the painted yellow line in the middle of the road. I'm on foot now, and I walk toward the boy, slowly and cautiously. His hair appears a dirty blonde shag, messy and powdered with what looks like dust. Suddenly, he rises from the ground and looks straight at me, perhaps through me. I gaze back into his eyes the best I can, noticing in them a sickly yellow color, like jaundice. He somewhat has a look of concern on his face, as if he's about to ask me for help but can't get the words out. He reaches out a hand toward me, but as soon as he does, he and his spotlight fade away, leaving me with nothing but the darkness of the fog once again. That boy looked so familiar. That's when I wake up from my dream. My eyes open tiredly to a dimly lit bedroom, the sun outside only barely poking holes through the clouds and shining through my curtains. Glancing first at the clock by my TV and then up to the calendar pinned above my dresser, I remind myself of the date and time to get my bearings as I wake from my haze. It is Monday, October 18th, 2010, 6 8:18 a.m., 12 minutes before my alarm is set to go off. With a tired sigh, I push my covers off of me and get up out of bed to head to the bathroom. With each labored step, I recall a different detail from the dream I just experienced, but for now, I push it to the back of my mind. Chances are it was just a bunch of random imagery, and I'm in no mood to decipher riddles right now. I flip the bathroom's light switch as my feet reach the cold linoleum. My eyes squint from pain as they adjust to the light and silently stare into the mirror. My Kurt Cobain-like hair a mess, mouth dry, listless look overall. I'm not doing too good. I turn the faucet on and wet my hands, splashing water into my face a couple of times to try freshening up. I comb my fingers through my hair and then run my hands over the light acne on my face. Not much better, but that might be more influenced by how I'm doing on the inside. Truth be told, I'm struggling to find any real meaning in my life right now, and have been for some time. It's getting worse as the days go by, feeling more and more dissociated from the world I live in. I'm drifting by in school just as much as I am in life outside of it, just marching in place, sinking deeper and deeper into my own mind. Somewhere in there, I can hear a voice telling me I'm worthless, and when I realize this, it shocks me. My eyes grow wide. I just don't know who I really am anymore. I've lost touch with all that wants to find me. I shut off the faucet to clarify my thoughts. The sound of it was battling against the white noise in my head. The last few days were perhaps the darkest of my life. I've done a few things I'm definitely not proud of. My legs grow weak, so I take a seat on the toilet. I massage my forehead to soothe the headache I can feel coming on. In my ensuing moment of reflection, my right hand begins to gently rub my left forearm with fingertips to relieve an itchy sensation. A feeling of shame crawls into me recalling what I've done. The cut on my arm. My hand tenses, threatening to disturb the scab over my nearly healed wound. I'm not sure if I want to heal. Just let me suffer for a bit longer. It was foolish of me to hurt myself, as if that would solve anything. I was led by a whirlwind of emotions as I took a knife to my arm and intentionally hurt myself in such a way for the first time. I don't really know how to feel about it now. What's done is done, but it makes me as sick as I felt when I committed the act last Friday. I flash back to that day as I mindlessly stand and approach the sink again. By now, I reason that the wound looks like any other cut, so hopefully, no one at school will really notice or bother me about it. I place my hands on the edge of the counter and lean against the sink, my emotions inside making me feel dizzy. Tears escape my eyes as I try to blink them away, rolling down my cheeks and dripping into the sink. The embarrassment and humiliation I felt coming back to me. Thinking about my rejection. It was in school last week, Thursday the 14th. I was seated at an outdoor picnic table near the main entrance of the school for lunch with the few real friends I can say that I have. Andrew, Eric, and Michael. Kyle was also there with us, but I don't care about him and he doesn't give a crap about me. Andrew is sort of friends with him for some reason I don't understand. He's the only link between my circle and his, but the rest of us at the table see him as the snake he really is. The way he treats girls and the cocky attitude he carries himself with irritate the hell out of me. He knows what he's doing, and he doesn't give a shit if the influence he has hurts others around him or not. Still, he's the popular one and always gets his way. So when I saw a real attractive girl walking across the courtyard toward our table, I knew it was for him. She stood right next to me, just inches away, across the table from Kyle. She probably didn't notice me, and I didn't notice what they were talking about. I was a ghost with a flutter in my chest, completely distracted and infatuated by the beauty she possessed. North of her slender curves was a pretty face accentuated by long ash blonde hair, parted to the right and layered to perfection. On her was a thin pink t-shirt blatantly showing through to a plain white tank top underneath. A white leather belt with studs that appeared hand-painted black held up her dark skinny jeans that fit snugly in all the right places around her hips and pelvis that God knows I was eyeing for so long. Just inches away. Her outfit was neatly tied together by her white Converse shoes, a white bead necklace, and pink silicone wristbands that matched her shirt. Just inches away. Before I knew it, she was saying bye to Kyle, and when she turned to walk away, we locked eyes for the first time. I felt my heart melt and arousal in my loins, but there was no hesitation in her passing, no second thought. Twisted around in my spot at the table, I watched her waist gently and alluringly sway as she walked back to her friends seated on a concrete ledge not too far away. Once more, our eyes met as she spun around to rejoin her friends, and, embarrassed, I quickly looked away, hoping she didn't realize the truth that I was staring at her the entire time. Andrew, my best friend at the table, witnessed the whole of my indignity and knew what was on my mind. "You should ask her out, man," he encouraged, thinly veiling a fanciful undertone. "No," I hummed back almost instinctively. "She'd never want me." That's when Kyle said it. "Ain't that right?" His shout killed the little confidence I had, and all of us at the table shot him a look, myself included, with additional bitterness. But that's just Kyle being Kyle. I'm not supposed to take him seriously. "Come on," Andrew began, trying to restore my confidence while glossing over Kyle's cruel jab. "We share a class, back in second period. I overheard her talking with her friends in there. She's single right now and hoping to find someone soon to go to homecoming with. All she needs is a hot stud like you bold enough to ask her out." The dance? That's next Friday, isn't it?" I began to concede, seriously questioning my chances and my sanity. Andrew kept egging me on, and Michael and Eric too soon joined him in strengthening my courage again, but it wasn't enough. Nothing could persuade me to just jump to the moment no matter how much I wanted to, no matter how much I liked her. Or so I thought. That's when Kyle once again opened his mouth and provoked me in the way that he does. "If you don't ask her out, I will." That hurt me. That panicked me. Kyle had verbally slapped me in the face, but as upset as that made me against him, that was exactly the kind of motivation I needed to do the unthinkable. I might have been signing my own death warrant, as Kyle may just have been intending, but damn it if I was going to let him toy with me. So, nervously, I stood up. Shaking from apprehension like carbonation in a bottle dropped on the ground, I followed the path she took to the ledge until I was within range of grabbing her attention. Ready as I'd ever be, I cleared my throat and murmured, insecurely until she looked up at me. My heart leapt into my throat as I realized what I was doing, far too late. The look on her face told me she was uncomfortable with my presence and annoyed that I was interrupting her, and the friends with her suddenly looked the same. She leaned away, and I couldn't stop myself from trembling. I saw in her eyes that the jury was already coming to its conclusion before I even had a trial, but still, I pushed forward and choked out a hi. I'd already gone that far. Can I take you to the dance?" Hopelessly, pathetically, I managed to stutter out those words, but I knew my fate was sealed. Off with my head already. Let's get this over with. "What? Me?" "No, I mean, I guess you're kind of cute, but I'm not in the mood to be hit on by a stranger. Could you leave us alone?" Despite being assertive, which itself I can respect, Her tone was cold and belittling. I don't blame her at all for denying me, but it was the contempt she showed me that was sharp like a knife piercing through my chest, and she was the one holding the handle. I turned away from her, defeated and stranded in hostile territory. I ruined any chance I had with not just her, but the friends with her too, and I dreaded bringing this shame back home with me. This was a nightmare that I was hoping to wake up from any second, but that relief never came. Not even the shining sun that day made me feel warm inside. With legs like concrete, I began to sulk back to my friends at the picnic table, but as if enough damage wasn't already done to my self-image, I heard chatter behind me that I can't tell if I was meant to hear. What was with that creep? I don't know, but he came from Kyle's table. I paused, petrified, but I didn't look back. This was my fault, and she was right. I was nothing but a stranger to her, a creepy, worthless, invisible stranger, and now that's all I'll ever be to her. The alarm clock in my bedroom starts going off like a trigger to return me to the here and now. Without any more time to waste, I leave the bathroom after making sure I remembered to turn the faucet off and return to my room. On my way to my bedside table, I flip the light in my room on before making it to my alarm clock, still yelling as loud as it can. After slapping the top of the clock to reset the alarm for tomorrow, I smoothly backtrack to the dresser I passed on my way here. Pulling open the drawers, I pick out what I need to get dressed. A black screen-printed Yeah Yeah Yeahs t-shirt and a pair of faded, light gray Rude jeans that I soon put on over the socks and boxers I slept in. From my nearby closet, I secure a checkered canvas belt around my waist and wrap a crimson scarf around my neck. Lastly, I pick up a pair of black old-school Vans from my floor and tie them over my feet, then make sure I'm not forgetting anything before leaving my room and shutting the light off on my way out. Through a silent hallway I pass, by the bathroom which now holds feelings of anxiety in my mind, between a dining room and foyer to the front door, and into the kitchen before making my final stop at the bar counter where I normally leave my essential belongings after coming home from school or errands. I lift my wallet off the laminated surface and thumb through it, checking my current funds. It's only holding $6 and some change currently, enough for 2 more school lunches and a bus ride home if I wish. But my weekly allowance envelope from my parents should be waiting for me by the time I get back from school today, so I have nothing to worry about there. I glance over at my school-issued ID card and read it subconsciously. Helsing High School, Matthew Jefferson, sophomore, 7/18/1995. These are the details that identify me to school staff. I'm smiling in the picture, but I don't remember what I was so happy about back then. Almost infectiously, though, a grin stretches along my face, remembering that I can look pretty good when I haven't been having a rough week. My eyes start to water again, but I pinch my fingers together over them to keep them dry. Today's a new day, and I've got to hold it together. I fold my wallet shut and tuck it away into my back pocket. Then, sighing out any lingering emotion, I lift my pinstriped military-style jacket off the back of a nearby bar stool and sling it on in a smooth motion. Next, I pull a heather gray Neff beanie from my jacket pocket and over my head as I step closer to my exit. Fully dressed for a chilly October morning, I finally grab my girl brand black nylon backpack by the back patio door and step outside, closing the curtain behind me as I lock up. Feeling the weather for myself now, the breeze hits me, so I make sure to zip up my jacket and tuck in my scarf as I pass over the grass of my backyard. The weather today isn't too unlike what I remember from my dream last night, in fact, but that's not too surprising. It's been like this all weekend since that wretched Thursday. And while others may hate on cloudy weather like this, overcast skies are honestly my favorite skies. The blinding light of the sun is usually unfavorable to me, and a cool autumn breeze is always just what the doctor orders. Walking steadily but not hurriedly, I step from my yard and across the neighboring side street toward the opposite corner of where 53rd Avenue meets Titchen Drive. Titchen runs east to west through most of my town and lines a 12-block path straight to my school, but I'm not planning on heading directly there today. Instead, I granted myself enough extra time this morning to take a scenic detour for the benefit of a mental refreshment. Sinton, Colorado is the town where I'm living now, a small Midwestern town nestled in the eastern shadow of the Rocky Mountains. An hour's drive west on I-76 will get you to Denver, and 2 hours the opposite direction will take you to Ogallala, Nebraska. It's a nice enough town for now, I suppose. Quiet, and there's comfort in being familiar with your surroundings as opposed to how easy it seems to feel lost or crowded in bigger cities. I've got my favorite locales close to home and can't really ask for anything more. The scenic destination I plan on visiting this morning is one of those locales, Necro Hill, unofficially but affectionately named by Sinton's more adventurous citizens. It's one of the few places in this town where I can find serenity and peace of mind, and I've been needing to clear my head for a new day after last week's trouble. A small patch of woodlands divides my neighborhood from my school, and Necro Hill lies at the heart of that. The proximity of it to home easily makes it one of my favorite places to visit, and it's fairly secluded as well. It seems not many people know about it, and even fewer hold positive opinions of it. Likely, that's due to a stigma the location has garnered from several alleged suicides that have been committed throughout the modern history of the town, either within the surrounding woods or on the hill itself. Some link it to vague rumors of ancient Native American curses that claim those who enter the woods with hostility in their hearts will become inexplicably lost and wander forever until their death, but little evidence backs this, or any of the suicides up for that matter. Despite the superficial and superstitious similarity to Japan's Aokigahara forest, perhaps it's just the name Necro Hill that puts the conventional types off and attracts only a macabre interest to it. As far as I know, though, the name comes not from any aforementioned Native American curse and whoever is storied to have inflicted it, but simply after Necrodromos Road, a fittingly named dead-end road leading up into the woods from the opposite south side of it before ending after a short distance in a cul-de-sac. Though it seems Necro Hill hasn't always been the way it is. I have read that it was once a more popular park area amongst townsfolk before my time, as evidenced by the wooden walkways up the hill and the lone park bench at the top that still remains. But now, the rumors of deaths and hauntings in the woods have deterred most of its former visitors, and any amount of official upkeep from the town with them, for what appears to be decades. It's a shame, really, because the view from the top of the hill is marvelous, if not treacherous. Not a lot has gone my way in life of late, but the helplessness and despair that would drive one to commit suicide is yet something I can even scarcely imagine. Call it optimism, but the beauty that life and love can create isn't something I'm giving up on yet. Even if all I am right now is just a bystander watching and waiting, I know that someday I'll find my purpose for being here. That's what I believe. Heading eastward after passing the corner of 53rd and Titchen, I stuff my hands into my jacket pockets and look up toward the sky. The darker shades I see tell me that it could rain at any moment, which I'd enjoy. The pitter-patter of it on the ground, the smell of it in the air. Continuing on my way, a slight gust of wind pushes against my body from the passing of a sedan whirring by me. Gravel softly grinds beneath my feet with each step, scattered loosely on the sidewalk, spilling over from a bed of rocks in the garden of my neighbor's home across the street from mine. I'm staring down at my feet now, watching them move as they march ahead. Weightlessness washes over me as I contemplate the automatic nature of their motions, the complexity and coordination of the human body. Gravity returns to me as I brush against, and nearly trip over, the base of an unsheltered bus stop bench. For as innately graceful as I can be at times, I sure can be really clumsy as well. Taking a brief pause to reorientate, I glance back to see I've progressed about 3 blocks down from my house, across from the deck of a bar and grill restaurant I've never been inside of. Soon now, though, I'll be passing by the food processing plant just before the clearing that leads into Necro Hill's eerie woods. And so, I push on, with a refreshed focus on my destination and the superstitions of the hill coming to mind again. While I've never had any personal experience with death, it's still not something I, or anyone, should take lightly. Life in a vacuum is a blessing, and the loss of it is tragic in any case, but should we let that control how we live? Should we let any ghosts from the past change how we see the future? Death is tragic, yet natural. Too many of us seem to put too grand of an emphasis on it, from funerals and rituals to ornate graves and baseless urban legends. Too much of what's occurred at Necro Hill has gone undocumented for one to write off the beauty within its trees. Too many people accept influence from what they read and are told to use any sense of their own. But perhaps how keen the town of Sinton seems on neglecting the area is exactly what draws a guy like me to it. Nowhere else in town do I feel quite as enchanted. No fear, no danger, no pressure from tall tales spread to drive the agenda of bulldozing the land to further industrialize the area. Only tranquility and seclusion, no matter what I read about it online. A worn dirt path past the factory veers off from Titchen's sidewalk and toward a dense wall of trees, ominous like a foreboding fort. Undeterred by the appearance, however, I continue approaching the small forest, losing its life to both gossip and the autumn weather. I cross my arms and grasp my elbows to the rising wind chill as fallen leaves crunch underneath me. The woods come alive before me as the treetops bristle about, welcoming me as I disappear into its shadows. Once I'm deep enough in to muffle the sound of traffic on Titchen, I look back over my shoulder. I can no longer distinguish the road through the trees, and relief begins to rinse through my soul. With a heavy sigh and lift of my head, I continue onward to the heart of the forest as my arms relax to my sides. Accumulated stress, worries, and darkness from the past couple of days shake loose from my mind to the rising of my spirits. The effect Necro Hill has on me must already be kicking in as my inner optimist seems to start peeking through again. I just feel it in my heart that someday I'll find hope and love to invest in. Someday, at least, if only to have something to look forward to. Before much longer, something catches my eye on the foot-worn path not too far ahead. Something shiny, appearing from here to be nested on a bed of fallen foliage. In seconds I come to be standing over it, a girl's pocket mirror, flipped open, showing an out-of-focus reflection, lost for who knows how long. This wasn't here the last time I came this way to Necro Hill, though, I'm sure of it. Especially if it hasn't yet had the time to settle into the fallen leaves around it, sitting so neatly on top of the ground as if it had just been dropped here. I look around, but see no one, however. Curious, I kneel down just enough to pluck it up from the ground, pinching it by its black plastic frame. Where I'm at now, I'm just a little past halfway through the trees between Titchen and the wood's centerpiece. I lift the mirror up in front of me and swivel it around a bit since it's too small to show my whole face at once. When my hand stops, I'm fixed on the reflection of my left eye. Sinking into the quicksand of my thoughts again, I blink and find my consciousness swept away on a wave of emotions to the recent past once more. I see myself shaking in distress on the other side of my bathroom's full-sized mirror, kitchen knife in one hand and blood running down from above the other. Blood from the fresh, self-inflicted wound that's now healing on my forearm. I got up out of bed that morning, Friday the 15th, not unlike how I did an hour or so ago. I went straight to the bathroom, feeling sick, the thoughts of humiliating myself in front of that girl from school the day before still despairingly fresh in the head and the heart. There, I knew I had to face myself. I didn't think I had any chance of moving on from what happened and how troubled I felt otherwise. But how I appeared, staring at my reflection in the bathroom mirror, what I saw I didn't recognize as myself. Looking back at me on the other side of that mirror was a horrid, disheveled, lifeless shell of a young man whose last emotional straw had broken the previous afternoon. The adolescent I had known myself to be in younger years before was much brighter than this. It was like seeing the sun enveloped in an indefinite eclipse, the wick of a once-burning candle being snuffed out. And it sickened me. I grew angry and violent against myself, against a world that would take so much brightness away from the kid I used to be, and in a deflective way, against her. A blinding rage had boiled up in me before I knew it, and I gave in to the bestial impulses overtaking me. In a swift, uncontrolled motion, my fist had lifted and slammed back down on the small counter space beside the bathroom sink, my eyes not once wavering from those of the husk I saw in the mirror. In a moment, I had realized the pain from this aggression was as a relief from that which I felt inside, a physical outlet for what I was feeling within. I broke eye contact with my monstrous reflection, and I slammed my fist on the counter again and again and again until it was swelling and numb to match the state of my heart. But even with the hurt balanced between the inward and out, I was still angry. I was still angry, lusting to cause more harm. And who better to harm than myself? Who else could I harm? My body moved hastily toward the kitchen with a mind like a whirlwind, and I pulled open the utensil drawer, looking for the sharpest knife I could find. With little hesitation, I grabbed the tool I deemed fit for the job and returned to the bathroom, just as quickly and just as rashly. I had seen and known of other troubled teenagers at school, some classmates, some acquaintances, how they have committed self-harm by slitting the skin on their arms and legs with razors and the like. I don't have any razor blades, anything as efficient as that, but I was set to make do with what I have, as I've always done, no matter what. Never before had I caused such grave harm to myself with the intent of it, but I had lost any care against it along with the shine in my eyes long ago. It was time. So said my hunger for penance. I was ready for it. I was fucking ready for it. I pushed my instinct to hesitate so far away, and I did it. I did it without any further thought. With my left palm pressed firmly down on the bathroom counter, I pushed the blade of the knife committedly against my forearm and gave it a quick swipe, splitting the skin and seeing red in an instant. I had cried out in the pain of it as I squeezed the knife's handle still in my right hand, but felt accomplished all the same. I actually did it. But I wasn't satisfied there. What if the first cut was just a scratch that had healed just fine? What if no scar would be left from this? No mark to remember the shame and turmoil that Kyle, she, and I had made me feel. After one last pause to brace to go again, I mentally numbed my frayed and trembling nerves. Looking into the mirror across from me as if to reassure myself, I pressed the knife against my now bleeding wound one more time and slashed at it again. I screamed in anguish and stomped my feet on the bathroom linoleum, my vocal cords like the blood streaming from my cut, expelling all aspects of my inner torment as I threw the knife away and into the hallway outside. It was after the rush had passed that shame set in. I couldn't bear to look up and see my reflection anymore, so I kept my head down as I caught my breath, blinked my tears away, and started to wash my cut in the sink. On the other side of it, coming down, I couldn't believe what I had done. What I had been driven to, rather. Fortunately, I had some gauze on hand which I used to wrap around my arm after cleaning the cut, and then I knew there was nothing left to do but move on. It was Friday, and I knew I'd have to leave for school soon, but I couldn't. Not like this. I was in no shape to mentally. At last, I found the courage to lift my head to the mirror one last time that morning, just quickly enough to look into my own eyes again and apologize to myself for what I had done. There I stood, choking down my shame before leaving to go to the phone and call in sick to school. "I'm sorry," I murmured to myself once more, back in the present day, still vaguely gazing into the pocket mirror I had just picked up from the ground. I let out a sigh as I blinked these memories away from my mind, and for a moment after doing so, in the mirror held in my hand, I see the face of a child that looks familiar and enough like me to not draw an immediate reaction, but as soon as I do notice, a child that definitely is not me. I adjust the angle of the mirror a bit to spot the dead, yellowed eyes of the child, but just like that, seamlessly, I see none other than my own reflection in the pocket mirror again, losing all trace of what I realize I think I saw. What was that? I consider how mentally fatigued I am, how fatigued I'd have to be to start seeing things like this, especially with the recollection of harming myself still actively stirring in my head. But was what I think I just saw a product of a skewed perception or something more supernatural? In this forest that surrounds Necro Hill? Maybe what I perceived was just an introspective glimpse of the kid I so often forget I am, I rationalize. My inner child. I am just 15 still. Then again, trauma does have a way of aging you fast, and aging really isn't doing me any favors, I don't think. I close and slip the feminine handheld mirror into a pocket of mine so as not to litter it again as I resume walking the path I'm on, my right hand gently beginning to hold and caress where my cut wound is through my left jacket sleeve. I had to clean and dress this wound on my own, recalling it, and call into school sick myself, with my parents out of the house as usual that Friday morning. I've really had to grow to be independent and take care of myself around home lately, for some time now. How am I not supposed to view what I saw as a projection of my inner child dying away, his once bright eyes now yellowing and lifeless? I can't accept any other reasoning for what I just witnessed in this mysterious pocket mirror. My mind feels too fragile right now to think on it any longer. As I finish passing through these woods with the thoughts in my head doing the same, at last I come upon a grassy clearing, the barren heart of this forest where Necro Hill now towers over me. Foreboding lightning flashes in the gray clouds above, and a gust of wind pushes against my body once more. I breathe in deeply, and fresh morning air fills my lungs. Once more, I am here, my home away from home, my sanctuary, Necro Hill. The hill in the middle of this forest is nothing natural. It is purely man-made. From what I've read online, it began being built by Native Americans on this land long ago, a formation of what's believed to be a long-forgotten subsect of the Arapaho tribe. The legend says that what's known now as Necro Hill was first intended to be a kind of ceremonial ground, a small plateau of a stage at the top of a hill overlooking the woods surrounding it, high enough to bring its creators closer to the natural, spiritual gods they worshipped. It's purported that while this grassy clearing before me was originally flat and level, the Arapahoes piled up earth here from the creek that runs alongside Necrodromos Road on the opposite side of the forest, a creek which they themselves dug so they'd have a source of running water near their village just off from the South Platte. A creek dug and a hill formed, all in an honest day's work, I suppose. When all was said and done in the Arapahoes' eyes, it's believed that they built up their ceremonial hill about 2 to 3 stories high, but then the pioneers and gold miners came into the picture in the 19th century and did what they do. As the white men came into the area to settle what is now Sinton, to establish something of a final stop for those moving out of the Nebraska Territory on their way to Pikes Peak for the gold rush at the time, they discovered the natives' hill in this very forest and took an interest in building it even bigger after the tribe had been driven off of the land. The same militaristic pioneers who drove the Arapahoes away saw the hill as a potential defensive lookout, doubling it in size by digging the creek even deeper, nearly running it dry, paving the way to the top with wooden planks cut from the trees they cleared to make more room for their build, and fortified it with benches, telescopes, and fort-like walls. Apparently, that's when the rumors of hauntings began. When a number of the pioneers that worked on building the hill up even more reportedly disappeared without a trace while traveling through the woods, the superstitious settlers speculated it was a curse of the Native Americans, vengeful for having their forest taken away. Those stories persisted and survived through the past century and a half, myself having come across it all online several years ago after hearing the fear my friend Andrew has of it back when we were kids. Today, Necro Hill, as it is now, has been stripped of all fortifications and any other modern amenities which would have been added to it through the 1900s. All that remains are the wooden walkways and stairs that jaggedly wind up to the top, and one single park bench on its small plateau of a peak. It's shrunk a bit in size over time as well, as a lack of groundskeeping of this mountainous dirt mound has meant that decades of weathering and erosion have caused the soil above to sink and settle back into the soil below at a glacial pace. The fact it's even here at all anymore is impressive, though, knowing its history, and stands as something of a lasting monument to the pre-Sinton Arapaho tribe that first built it. All the better that not many people of my generation know about it, much less visit it anymore. It makes coming here a lot more personal and intimate for me spiritually, and for anyone else as adventurous and in need of an isolated, special place as myself as well. Approaching the beginning of Necro Hill's ascending path, I start my way up the first set of 4 stairs, brushed with a dusty blanketing of earth holding the lingering impressions of shoes from the past. I walk up and continue, on my way to the top, following the weathered wooden path and sparse sets of stairs over the rough, uneven surface of the hill, 2 to 4 steps at a time as they come. Some of the wooden boards are broken away, revealing the mulch-like dirt covered in moss and weeds underneath in several spots that match the rest of what's covering this hill. Some sections are even missing entirely, leaving only short lengths of the dirt path the natives walked where these chunks of the rotting boardwalk are gone. It takes about 10 minutes or so, but finally I reach the top. One last set of 3 wooden stairs ends the path up, bringing me to a level platform of solid dirt that is Necro Hill's peak. There's enough room up here to fit about a dozen people with decent enough elbow room, but vastly more often than not, I have the space all to myself when I come here. With soft steps, I move toward the lone wooden bench sat atop here, the only physical remnant left of Necro Hill's past as a local attraction. The bench, made with the same planks that paved the way up here and black wrought iron for its frame and armrests, sits a bit off-centered on this landing and faces longingly to the west. It's a beautiful sight, coming here on slow evenings and watching the sun set over the Rocky Mountains, the height of this hill standing well above the trees of the forest to give you clear view of the surrounding horizon. I set my backpack down on the ground and lower myself onto the seat of the bench, ready to give myself to the magic of this place and cleanse my especially troubled mind. I breathe slowly and deeply and blink my eyes a few times at a deliberate pace. And suddenly, I'm startled when I notice the presence of someone else up here with me. How odd. I could have sworn I was alone. I didn't see or hear anyone else around when I got here, or following me on my way up, though it's entirely possible I've just been too lost in my own head to have perceived anyone else outside of it the way my weekend has gone. But with the ghostly face I saw in the pocket mirror down in the woods, though, what if... No. I can't let this bother me right now. With how many tricks this world has been playing on my mind lately, it's only fair for my mind to be playing a few tricks back. No matter what, though, it seems especially eerie how this other person stood only a few feet away in a dark hoodie with his shoulder facing me, hasn't yet turned toward me to acknowledge my presence with him, now that I've joined him up here, or that he's joined me, whichever way it happens to be. On the thought of it, this is just the 3rd time in memory this year I haven't been alone here on the top of the hill. Just over a month ago in September, there were a couple of middle school kids I begrudgingly shared this space with, without any way to avoid them. I know not all kids younger than me are bad, but these 2 were especially goofing around and grating on my nerves, personifying my bias against children and soiling what I always hope will be a peaceful and serene visit. On the other hand, though, a few more months ago, just before summer break, I met a slightly older woman who I swear I could have fallen in love with had we shared more than just a solitary, fleeting evening. She was petite and had a lonely air about her to mirror mine when I came upon her. Meekly I asked to take a seat next to her, and she had no qualm against it. Here on this very bench we sat, chatted, and comfortably connected as strangers on that evening, back when I was still a freshman and less withdrawn. From what I could tell, she was as pretty as she was soft-spoken, and hesitant to really look at me, beyond the handful of side glances I noticed. I took it as her just being nervous and shy rather than anything rude against me, though. I'm the same way, after all. But even though I only caught a few passing glimpses of her face as we sat together for an hour or 2, faint age lines I saw around her cheeks told me she could be from 5 to 10 years older than me. Likely a smoker, and someone legally old enough to be. In the moments we were silent, though, while I sat just appreciating the sights and sounds of Necro Hill, She would fiddle around with the ring that she was holding, but for as long as I was there, I never saw her put it on. I thought it was strange, but never asked about it. Whatever she was going through that brought her to Necro Hill that evening was not my business to impose on. But now, this tall, brooding man stood only a few feet away from me this morning is someone I've never seen before, to be sure. But, oddly, his presence feels familiar, and I can't place why. Without much thought cautioning against curiosity, I lean forward slightly, trying to get a look at this man's face past the hood over his head. I catch the smallest peak from what I believe is still just outside of his peripheral range, and what I see is very pale white skin, with eyes hidden in shadows underneath a pronounced brow. A formidable stature and steadfast posture give a sense of experience and age of a man nearing midlife. "You come up here often?" He speaks, startling me out of trying to get a read on him, in a higher-toned voice than I was expecting. And while his words were clear, I couldn't tell if that was a question or a statement with the way he said it. "Yeah," I answer him, assuming it was a question. "The name's Billy," he introduces himself, still not averting his gaze from the trees to the west, slightly northwest. Matthew," I chime in with my own name, likewise feeling deterred from trying to look at him any further than I already have. Neither of us move for a moment more. I sit, and he stands as we both continue staring off in the same directions we are. An air of awkwardness and discomfort begins to set in, though, doubting how much trust I can put in this older man of intimidating size and disposition while I'm all alone here with no phone and no one knowing where I'm at. That is, until he starts to speak again. "Never give up on life, kid. Don't make the same mistakes as me. Hope is something worth fighting for, at all costs," Billy tells me, out of nowhere. His words shock me, both at how abnormal it is to talk to a stranger so personally, so suddenly, but also at how uncannily relevant they ring. It brings me around to seeing him in a more open-minded and understanding way. Billy lowers his hood off his head, revealing that he's bald underneath it. Softly, he looks over his nearest shoulder, but looks down to the ground below us rather than at me still. He continues to talk, though, as if he's read me like a book and understands me as well as a novel knows the paper it's printed on. "You never know what tomorrow can bring, or the next few hours for that matter. The mind can be a dark place at times, but no matter how blinding that darkness can be, never stop trying to move forward. Never stop discovering what's waiting for you around that next corner, and there will always be a next corner. Even when it seems like your world is turning upside down and you can't make sense of right or wrong anymore, you will always have people or passions or milestones in life, anything that makes you who you are, to catch you and keep you from falling. All you need to do is be true to yourself and let them catch you. I just don't want you to end up like me. I see you in this forest, often, and you remind me a lot of myself when I was your age. I believe you come here for a reason. I can feel it. And like most others I meet, it must not be too far off from the reasons I had when I was younger. At my age now, though, where I am now, it's too late for me. I've done things that I can't undo, and I've regretted it ever since. The only hope I have left is to do what I can and help others. Encourage them to not make the same thoughtless choices I have. But it's not too late for you, Matthew, nor will it ever be if you take my words to heart. Whether you dream big or drift by, living quietly and appreciating all the small things, set your sights on what you want, what makes you happy in life, and never give them up. That's what'll always take you somewhere, but you will never know where if you ever let that go. Billy's monologue, to which I listened intently, comes to an end. I can honestly feel hope stir in my heart and find comfort in his gentle conviction. But with that, Billy falls silent once more and turns back to stare off over the trees in the same direction as he was before. I too return to a resting distant stare, once again just idly listening to the sound of the wind ruffling through the trees encircling Necro Hill. In a minute or so, the wind really begins to pick up. The many sounds coming from the leaves in the trees increase in volume, and feeling the strength of the wind gusting against my body, I brace myself by grabbing tight onto the collar of my coat. Dust and loose foliage from the ground below me get kicked up in the wind and begin to brush against my face, so I close my eyes to protect them until the weather calms down again. My legs shiver from feeling the ensuing chill in the air, so I grind my feet into the ground to get my body moving in an attempt to keep myself feeling warm. Noticeably, though, the sound from the trees around Necro Hill in the wind is too loud to hear anything else, even my feet shuffling over the dirt below me. I spend a moment sitting on this bench, feeling drowned out and briefly detached from my senses, hoping for this weather to soon pass. Within the next minute, the weather does die back down to the gentle October breeze of before. I ease my eyes back open again, blinking them to be careful of any dust that may linger in the air, and Billy is gone. Billy's vanished just as suddenly as he seemed to have appeared. Did he turn and leave, simply walking away and returning whichever way he came from while the wind was at its strongest? Did he leave Necro Hill any other way? Is there any other way? I continue to sit here a while longer, all on my own again now. Everywhere my mind goes thinking about how Billy left, or anything else about him for that matter, I exhibit no reaction, outward or inward. I kind of just feel numb, or in a stupor. Well, what power do these woods hold to make me feel this way, in the face of something so seemingly bizarre? So many mysteries seem to surround forested land, from the Rockies to the Appalachians, from stories of siren spirits pulling hikers off trails never to be seen again, to tales of forces that rise in the night and make campers vanish from their tents. Me, I grew up in this mountainous state. The forests of Colorado I've always been able to look at as a friend, something familiar to me that I've never really found to be scary, at least during the daytime, because it's the unknown that people derive what they're afraid of. Because of that, though, I suppose it's easy for me to dismiss that there is an underlying might and power that exists within the woods, no matter which neck of them you're in. Every single part of it is alive, from the trees and the grass, to the creatures that inhabit them, both known and unknown, to even the air you breathe. The air out here can feel electric at times. It's as if every moment that one exists within the mercy of nature, you are existing within a living entity, and as soon as you lose sight or respect of that, that's when you open yourself up to potentially becoming its next victim. Whichever way Billy came about, I'm just grateful that we crossed paths, and for the unsolicited yet supportive philosophical insight he shared with me, whoever, or maybe whatever, he is. However, he arrived and left again without a trace. He and his speech about life and the hope and comfort and validation I derived from it will stick with me all the same. I sit here at the top of Necro Hill for a few minutes more, elbows on my knees, until it comes to me again that I'm supposed to be on my way to school, and I've lost my sense of time ever since meeting Billy. As a teenager without a watch or a cell phone, I can really only guess. But having the feeling that I've certainly overstayed my time here at Necro Hill for today, I pick my backpack up and sling it back over my shoulder as I stand up and quickly but nonchalantly retrace my steps back down the hill, through the woods, and lastly to Titchin Drive the same way I came. Reaching the sidewalk that'll lead me straight to my school again, I feel a sprinkling sensation on my face. That and the smell in the air tell me that the gray clouds above are starting to let down their rain over Sinton. I straighten the scarf around my neck to keep myself warm, as I keep my mind from getting distracted again for the 6 or so blocks remaining until I reach my school, heading east. On this side of the small forest containing Necro Hill is a cozy-looking apartment complex, followed by another residential road or two that pass by to my right until I reach 44th Avenue. It's here, past its intersection with Titchin, where fields for various school sports begin to the southeast, and it's through these fields I regularly cut to reach the main entrance of Helsing High. My feet reach a paved walkway after I round a corner past an old empty swimming pool, which I understand is structurally damaged beyond repair and thus hasn't been used in years, when I hear the school bells ring, played over the speakers in the walls of the building now in front of me. Taking this as confirmation that I'm late, I stamp my feet against the pavement thereon in an attempt to knock free wet blades of grass and dirt from the fields clinging to my shoes before looking ahead. Looming before me now, like the outer walls of a prison, are the primary sets of doors entering into Helsing High. To the right, the small adjacent courtyard, and the picnic table and ledge where that girl sat therein, and where my broken heart lies in between. For what I want to be the last time, I push my memories from Thursday into my mind's archives, subconsciously grasping at my healing cut through the sleeve of my jacket, as if soothing it this time will help in finally swallowing this pill. I push myself ahead, not turning an eye toward that red picnic table, and I reach out, open, and enter in through the doors in front of me. My eyes take a second to adjust to the dim lighting of the most basic of school lobbies coming in from the daylight outside. The emptiness of the foyer, save for a few other students as punctual as I am, cues me that the bell I heard outside was the second of the school's opening bells, indicating that the time is 8:05. My eyesight isn't the only sense in need of adjusting, though, as in most rooms of my school, this lobby included, the musty smell of old paint permeates through the air, likely due to the sheer age of this building. The aroma hits my nose upon entry every time. I made the decision over the weekend after staying home on Friday that I was going to clear my things out of my school locker, a locker I share with my friend Eric, who was present on that Thursday lunch period, located in a second-floor hallway. I never really use it, and after desperately missing my drawing notebook over the weekend after realizing I left it in there, I decided that the issue needs solving. I'll find it much more efficient to just carry everything I need with me from now on, and anything I don't need I plan on bringing home to store there. That way, Eric can have all the locker space to himself. It's unfortunate, though, that I'm already as tardy as I am, and doubly so for my stubbornness once I set my mind to something. So I head toward the direction of the nearest staircase rather than that of my first class. On the way there, I give a passing glance to a group of students still lingering in a corner of the foyer, a couple of them wearing our school's letterman jackets, not letting the bells pull them from whatever it is these jock-looking teenagers are talking about. Funny enough how I take it that these boys likely think themselves to represent the best of our school's student body, with their bestowed sports jackets and handsome baby faces, yet here they are with no more regard to the schedule of our school than I. But I bet that if they turn to look at me and see me passing by with my unkempt hair, chubby face, scarf, and skinny jeans, I'd somehow be looked down on, as if I was any less than them. I'd bet that they only need to look down to the school's initial H, big and bold on their jackets like badges of honor, to be empowered in their entitlement, to feel the sense that they run this place, and that the school runs on their time, not the other way around. While me, I'm just a drop of fresh rain in the salty water of the ocean, a misfit in the hazy sea of people in the world, unwilling to bend myself to go with the flow. That's where I'm different from everyone. I round a corner just beyond the lobby and start my way up a flight of stairs, behind which a couple of snack vending machines are tucked away. One step at a time, I make my way steadily up to a middle landing where the stairs U-turn to end right above where it started, off of the main lobby. It's here at this halfway platform where I brush shoulders accidentally with a feminine body, heading downward. "Excuse me, sorry," I hum out to the assumed girl. I pause briefly and turn slightly to see who I've bumped into, and they do too, showing herself as the very same girl I threw my fragile heart at on Thursday. It's Kyle's friend, and the hurt intensely swells back to me, seeing her face in person again. Not looking at me yet, she starts, "No, But then she comes to the same realization as me when her eyes meet mine, days after I swore to never want to see her again. "Oh, it's you. Sorry, but watch out. If this happens again, I'm not going to think you're touching me by accident," she finishes, and coldly turns to continue her way down the stairs. It's me, and I finish my way up the stairs too, just as coldly, but for the opposite reason as her. At least she was wearing her school ID on a lanyard around her neck, so now I can put a name to the scar on my psyche. Sarah Matson. God, what did she mean by, "I'm not going to think you're touching me by accident"? Does she really have it in her head that I'd be stalking her? I guess I don't blame her, but I wish she didn't look at me that way either. I wish it didn't have to be that way. I wish I could wave a magic wand and take back my foolishness from Thursday, to start over with her so I could just ask if she would simply be my friend, rather than a stupid date to a stupid school dance. I wish I could just socialize like a normal kid and make friends, casually, with anyone and everyone I liked. If only there was some way that girl and I could have come together naturally, as two strangers should. But now, I'll never know how different things could be if things happened any other way. I'll have to live with this being all we are to each other now, and all we probably will ever be. On the second and top floor of the school, I turn right down the arterial corridor before me, and just past halfway down to the end of it, I take a left down a smaller hallway branching off from the main one. It's in here where I come to the locker I've been sharing with Eric. Since I really don't come here often, it always takes a second for me to recall the combination for the lock. As I turn its dial, the fluorescent light above me steadily flickers between dim and fully lit, just about as well as I'm holding it together right now. With the locker door pulled open at last, a new magazine I've not seen before on the top shelf is the first thing to catch my eye. To satiate my curiosity about it, I grab it to see what it is. The newest October 2010 issue of Transworld Skateboarding. I look further down to the main body compartment of the locker and see Eric's skateboard wedged into the space. With these things in mind, I reminisce of the times I've gone skating with Eric before, as recently as last year, until I rolled my ankle pretty bad on a simple kickflip attempt, and I haven't yet dared to try again since. Luckily, my parents were still around home as regularly as they should to help take care of me as I recovered from that sprained ankle. If anything like that happened again, or worse, the way things are now, I'm not sure how well I'd get by. I place Eric's Transworld magazine back where I found it and think on what brought us to sharing a locker in the first place. After all, as cool as Eric is, it's Andrew who I consider to be my closest and most trusted friend. However, freshman year in 2009, when we first started attending Helsing High, Andrew was still with his now ex Rosa at the time. He and Rosa, of course, paired up for a locker together back then, leaving Eric and me to get one of our own by the next best option. It wasn't meant to be between Andrew and Rosa, though, as they had their infamously heated breakup before freshman year ended. But even so, he still holds a sentimental value for the space they shared together. He doesn't want to leave it, and thus his memories there behind to relocate to another locker, and doesn't want anyone else to move into the space either, as to him, that was meant to be Rosa's place, whether or not she still feels the same way. Andrew truthfully has much experience with love and heartbreak already, and the baggage of his own that comes along with it, and I'm only just now beginning to step foot toward his level. I get to work picking through the contents of this locker, stuffing everything of mine haphazardly into my backpack. Textbooks, old notebooks, spare mechanical pencils, a novel by Darren Shan, and lastly, my drawing notebook, which I missed so dearly over the weekend. I hold this notebook longingly in my hands for a moment, looking affectionately at the DIY decorations adorning its cover. I'm proudly into the indie music I've had the pleasure of discovering, but being a kid with no income and living in what might as well be the middle of nowhere, I found myself having to get creative with how I express the art I love. Mostly, that means using my computer, printer, and a liberal amount of tape at home to craft my own homemade stickers and posters. Decorating the cover of this notebook are a couple of legitimate stickers purchased from Sinton's local music store, Dave's Music, showcasing the logo of my favorite band Radiohead as it appears on the cover of the bins, as well as one for Sinton's own Make Me Famous, a local band which namesake store owner Dave himself is a part of. And then cover art for the self-titled album of Black Mountain, and Anything Else But the Truth by the honorary title, printed out and taped on in my homemade way. Finish for now what I have decorating this notebook beyond a few pin doodles in between. I slip this last item into my bag with the rest of my things and take one last look over of the locker to make sure I'm not missing anything before zipping close my backpack, shutting the locker door, and re-securing the lock. Ready as I'll ever be to finally head toward my first class of the day, I retrace my steps back to the stair set I came up, but continue on past them. My first class of the day is Honors English, which is also on the second floor of the school, but on the opposite side of the building as my now former locker. On the first floor, the cafeteria next to the main entrance I came in through lies as a middle ground between the east and west sides of the building. On the second floor where I'm at, a skyway passes over the roof of the cafeteria below, connecting the main east and west upstairs hallways. Passing through this skyway is what will most directly take me to the English class I am likely considerably late for. What's a shame is how I'm averaging a solid C in English class this trimester. It should be one of my best subjects based on how passionate I am for the art of creative writing, but no amount of passion can carry me through how dull and monotonous its teacher is, especially for it being my first class of the day, considering how tired I usually feel in the mornings. I enter the classroom through its heavy wooden door, and a few heads of students who are mostly strangers to me lift in my direction to the creaking of the hinges to see who's here. It's just me. The teacher is the last to look over after finishing a sentence he was in the middle of, his eyes silently acknowledging me as I move toward the seat assigned to me. He doesn't say anything now, but I can tell he wasn't expecting me to show. That he's already marked me as absent, and I've given him extra work to correct me to tardy. It's whatever to me at this point, though. I sit and set my backpack down on the floor next to me with a heavier thud than usual, with all of my locker stuff in it now. I look toward the clock to see what my damage is this morning as I get comfortable, removing my beanie from my head and unwrapping my scarf from around my neck, letting it hang loosely from my shoulders instead. 8:12 a.m. it reads. I focus as well as I can manage on the lecturing of today, through the first 20 or so minutes of this class until the teacher puts a video up on a projector, dimming the lights down to do so. I take this as an opportunity to lay my head down on the desk and rest it for as long as I can get away with, reasoning that I should try restoring the energy I'll need to make it through the rest of the day today. I do this feeling semi-safe in the knowledge that usually when the teacher puts a video on, he keeps his attention off of what the students are doing, as he tends to get sucked in and watches along with whatever he's projecting as well. The heaviness of my eyes this morning brings them closed, and I can't help but let the waves of dreams carry my mind away like driftwood. I come to memories of myself in second grade. That'd be 2002, 8 years ago, the year I moved to Sinton, the fall after my 7th birthday. Before that, my parents and I had lived in Denver for as long as I can remember. At that point in my life, everything had still felt normal and healthy. The only odd thing to me going back that far is that my parents were never anything but vague when I'd ask about where I was born. The friends I had at that time got talking of the hospitals they were born in one day, and I wanted to know about myself too. When I would try asking about it, though, from what I remember, the most direct of an answer I'd ever get, apart from outright deflection, would be a simple, "Here." I can recall myself asking back to them, "In Denver?" And I can hear in my head my mom's insincere and uncertain, "Mm-hmm." The strangest thing, though, is that I've since asked about it again as I've gotten older here in Sinton. My curiosity about the years of my life I would have been too young to remember persisting, and still, my mom's answer is, "Here, honey," all but confirming my skepticism about Denver being my birthplace. Regardless, I've learned not to worry about it, and that home is wherever I feel most comfortable rather than whatever my birthplace is. But I do still hope that I'll know the truth someday and find out why my parents have always been so secretive about it. In second grade, after transferring to West Sinton Elementary from my old Denver school that I can't even remember now, I felt as much of a stranger those first few months as I have been again these days. That was until I met Andrew. He was the first kid I was able to call a friend since beginning the life I'm living now. I really appreciate how he's stuck around with me all this time. One early afternoon, the teacher, Mrs. Sanders, had called us up as a class to go out to the bathrooms down the hall, as we do at regular times throughout the day. I recall in first person watching an older kid coming from the side of the school where the 5th and 6th graders had their classes, pass by in front of my classmates and me as we waited in line for our bathroom break. I had thought it was strange since we were told kids couldn't be out in the halls on their own, and this one in particular strode by swiftly, yet perhaps anxiously, by the way he hid his eyes from us. A curiosity inside drove me to find where this kid went, maybe to check to see if he was okay. I don't really know. At the time, there were still 5 or 6 kids ahead of me, and it looked like the older kid went into the communal bathroom area from the far side of the hall, past the brick wall that conceals it. If so, I was hoping he'd still be in there by the time I got in as well, to see what he was up to. By the time I did make it in, cautiously, I passed by the stalls one by one since I didn't see him right away in the area where the urinals were. Then, in the last stall against the far wall, there he was, with dark, sunken eyes, and just standing there, just staring down at trembling hands. In them, there was something metal he was holding, something I knew a kid had no business having possession of, especially in a school. And there was red on him, and then all fades black, like I can't seem to remember anymore. I seem to lose all sense of time passing. I hear the sound of ringing bells, first like the ones in my elementary school sounded, and then like those I'm more recently familiar with. I awaken. Just as I do, my honors English teacher passive-aggressively nudges me at my desk with his elbow. I promise I didn't mean to doze off in his class again, but what I promised doesn't matter. Groggily, I raise myself up out of the seat, not looking to say anything or make excuses. I just lift my backpack up off the floor and I go. I try to ignore the teacher's stern expression as I step toward the door, but I hear his voice speak behind me. I'm going to need better attendance from you, Matthew. This is your last warning. You're a good writer, but I can't overlook your lack of effort. I stop with apprehension to his misunderstanding criticism, turn to nod in acknowledgement at him while still avoiding eye contact with him, before lastly, finally, passing through the door back to the hallway outside. What was that? With what I saw in my memories, did my experiences from the past bleed into dreams as I happened to drift off asleep? Now that I'm conscious again, I'm struggling to recall anything in my mind about an older kid doing who knows what alone in my old school's bathroom. It'll probably be something I'll never have an answer to, because I'll probably never dream of it again. I merge with the flow of traffic in the hallway, blending as I can with the dozens, if not hundreds, of students now moving in unison to their next classes. For me, Period 2 is world history, and the classroom is basically in the same spot of the building as Honors English, just on the floor below. In this second floor hallway, I head west to the stairs on that end so they can take me down. Reaching them, I begin descending, zoned out, having left my body to go with the flow on autopilot. I'm brought back to sentience, though, when I reach the middle landing where the stairs U-turn to continue their way to the ground floor, because I spot Kyle, him coming up as I'm going down. I haven't seen Kyle at all, of course, since that lunch period last Thursday, just as it was with who I now know as Sarah, too. And just as it was with her, I was hoping I'd never see him again after what happened, too. But now I've come across both of them, coincidentally, while either climbing or descending the school's stairs. It's fortunate, at least, that with the passing of students on the stairs around us, neither of us has the chance to stop or try to say anything, lest we get in other classmates' way. He sees me too as we pass, though, and Kyle gives me what I take as a mocking, or at the very least, ignorant to how he made me feel, nod of acknowledgement. I at least give him the dignity of returning eye contact with him, but don't offer a courtesy more. Soon he rounds the corner up the stairs as I do going down, him followed closely by 3 girls. I believe the blonde one is Tiffany, Erica with the unnaturally dyed hair, and the Hispanic dark-haired Mireya, in that order. We've been introduced before. By the time I reach solid ground again on the first floor, I step out of the way of others to pause, mentally shaking off the feelings of jealousy I feel for Kyle. Ever the playboy, just as it was at Thursday's lunch, he's rarely seen without at least one pretty girl closely following him at his heels. Is it the money he flaunts frivolously from well-off parents who own a large home in Inglewood, Sinton's neighborhood in the hills with a swimming pool in every backyard? Is it because he's never been crippled by the anxiety that kids like me suffer every time we even just think about talking to someone that we like? It certainly can't be looks, because he definitely isn't any better than me in that regard. Not when I keep on top of my grooming, at least, that is. God, why can't I... No. While it may be that I'll never be as popular as he is, I'll never want to be him. I'm much better than that. I resume moving again. As I finish the rest of my way to my history class, my mind fixates a bit on the last girl I made note of who passed me on the stairs, Kyle's Hispanic friend, Mireya. Thinking on it, a good portion of Helsing High's student base is Hispanic. I believe within Sinton, Hispanics are the second highest demographic behind just us whites, of course. Sinton, from what I know, is equal parts industrial and agricultural. On one hand, a good number of large farms surrounding this suburban town produce tons of a variety of grain crops. On the other hand, a good number of warehouses and factories operate in town that process and package said crops to ship primarily to the larger plants in Denver. Naturally, in generations past, that line of work attracted immigrant families to the area. However, that kind of word spread around back then. For myself, my extended family happens to be heavily involved with the shipping side of that business. One of the most heavily involved, in fact. My Uncle Adam founded, owns, and operates his own local trucking business, Flying Jefferson's Trucks. He and his drivers ship whatever cargo around town, not just food, but supplies for the other companies handling it as well, and a little way outside of town too, with Denver just about being the limit of their reach. After all, my uncle was the one who talked my mom and dad into leaving what they had in the big city and helped them get nice jobs out here. That way, he and my dad, the two of them having spent a lot of their adult lives away from each other till then, could be just within a few miles from each other again. Unfortunately, though, those jobs now seem to be what keeps my parents away from home so much these days. I appreciate them doing what they need in order to financially provide for me and the house the way that they do, of course, but I haven't felt like a normal kid in a normal household in years. Too bad that Uncle Adam is like me and isn't the flashy and boisterous type either. Otherwise, he might actually put the Jefferson name up on the sides of his trucks that drive around town. Instead, he doesn't, likely because his services are exclusive to the other private companies of Sinton's food supply chain, rather than the public who he'd then have to advertise to. If he did, though, maybe then my name could be as well known as Kyle's is around here. That might be just the fair trade-off I'd need to be okay with my parents so rarely being at home anymore. I pass through the open doorway of my second period history class and head toward my table down the first of 3 rows along the nearest wall, careful not to trip on anyone else's bags in the aisle on the way there. A notorious thing, history is, thinking about it. I get why it's a class in school and all, but in my mind, perhaps if we let go of our yesterdays, that would open up that many more paths we can take in our tomorrows. The elders in our world are generally the ones seen as holding us back to sustain the nonsense traditions and prejudices of the past, while, on the other hand, it's humanity's youth who want to innovate and progressively create better, safer, and more accepting futures for us all to live in. I'm sure my views on this have nothing to do with how world history is my lowest graded class in school. Not at all. And I have no plans to improve it either. But what I do plan on is supporting my generation's effort to weed out the toxicity and bigotry of ages past. I lower myself onto the seat assigned to me at a table wide enough to seat 2 students, as they do. Not an eye in class has come up to me since I entered. Beside me to my right, my classmate who I share this table with is already here, as she usually is, Jamie Summerfield. It's unknown to me what her first period class is, but either it's closer to world history than mine, or she's an exceptionally fast walker to beat me here every day. On the first day of school for this class, the post-middle-aged teacher shared with us that he had penciled in, with an actual pencil, mind you, the old kook, the seating assignment for the tables in his class, 2 students per each double-wide table. If there were any objections to how he'd written it down, he would have been happy to change people around until everyone was okay, but God, did I not have any objections. I can thank my intermittent and inconsistent luck that I was randomly paired as such with a decently attractive but not unapproachable girl. Thanks, old man. Only, in the 2 months we've been sat at the same table together, neither of us has really said a word to each other outside of what we need to while working together on class assignments. Her voice, from what I've heard of it though, is incredibly soft-spoken like mine. It can actually be hard to hear what she's saying at times. I've always had the impression that we could have a lot in common to relate and bond over, however, given either of us ever start to chip away at the layer of ice between us. But I need to stress how attracted to this girl I feel. She's as reserved as I've grown to be and never does anything to call attention to herself. But to me, that's perfect. As much as American culture sexualizes women with countless portrayals of the gender in various media showing as much leg and chest as possible, I'd actually say that I'm drawn that much more to the opposite. Nothing attracts a guy like me more than innocence and modesty, casualness and comfort. It leaves more to the imagination, and God knows that mine is a powerful one. Jamie is about 5'3" or less on a guess to my 5'11", with a naturally tan skin tone and dark, bronzy, straight hair. From my recent thoughts about Hispanics in Sinton, my first assumption on meeting her at the start of the year was that too was where she gets her skin tone from, but having since gotten a little more familiar with her face over the months, its structure and features hint more toward an Italian heritage, I believe. Her body size is average, whatever that may be. More chubbiness than skinniness on her. She has just a little bit of a belly that overlays her waistline whenever I see her without a sweatshirt on, which hasn't been often. She tends to keep herself covered as much as what's reasonable for the weather. Nevertheless, I find her very cute, and honestly always have since we met at the start of the year. Oftentimes, I've caught myself wishing that it could be me wrapped around her like the sweaters and hoodies she usually wears. I get as relaxed in my seat as I can, my hands fidgeting on the table in front of me as I stare blankly ahead toward the chalkboard, backpack set on the floor in the aisleway to my left. There's just a couple minutes left before the school bells will ring again to officially begin period 2. Through peripheral vision, I can see Jamie scribbling in a binder cradled in her arm nearest to me, writing something down. Maybe working on last-minute homework, but I don't know. She admittedly is kind of a spaz in her behavior. Her word, not mine. She does have an air of nervousness as I sit here next to her, though, more so than usual, as she erratically moves a pen over paper, stopping only to scratch something out every now and then. The awkward feeling of pretending to be alone here at this table is well shared between us, it seems. She has made a point to express to me in the past that she doesn't mean to come off as cold, and I've returned to her that the same sentiment exists within me as well. To either ease my mind or at least distract myself from the silent tension between my table mate and me, I reach down beside me to unzip my backpack and pull my drawing notebook out of it. I part the covers and flip to an incomplete landscape scene sketched in pencil. I thus pull a pencil out from my jacket pocket to continue where I left off on my work last week. On the right half of the page is a rough outline of a warehouse-like building with an as-of-now blank billboard on the roof, intent on it being some kind of a surplus gun shop, like a Cabela's, but with a lot more of an emphasis on their hunting rifles and the like. The background of the left half of the page shows a few sketch-quality hills and trees to loosely illustrate a forest, while in more detail in the foreground are a family of 3 deer in seated positions in what would be the parking lot of the gun shop. When it all comes together, my intention with this drawing is meant to express my feelings on guns, in particular, hunting. My point in drawing the family of deer as if they're the customers in the parking lot is to humanize them as equals to us, intentionally subverting the normal implied roles of predator and prey to show them and my views on hunting the way I see them. That pulling a trigger on a deer, especially in the name of sport, should be seen as no more acceptable than us being the ones who are hunted. That it shouldn't matter the species of the life being ended when life is ended. That no sport or pastime should ever justify what is otherwise murder. I'm running my pencil along the body of one of the deer to add a little color and shading to her when I become aware of something, or rather, the lack of something. Jamie's pen has come to a sustained stop. My shading slows as my eyes turn to one side, trying to see what she's now doing instead, trying to keep my curiosity of her current stillness inconspicuous. What I see, her body is now turned toward me, as if she's peering over my shoulder. Is she watching me sketch? Is her attention on me now that I'm the one scribbling on a piece of paper in my own way? I refocus on the work in front of me, thoughts running through my head about why she could be focused on what I'm doing. Is she intrigued by my drawing, or offended by the subject matter? For as long as I try to ignore the attention on me, it quickly becomes too hard to resist acknowledging. I glance over my shoulder in her direction, and for a second, when her gaze lifts to meet mine, we lock eyes. Then, just as quickly, she turns her face away again. She seems to scramble as she grabs hold of her binder again and resumes her scribbling, a touch more furiously and frantic than before. As I'm inquisitive about just what she's thinking, I receive a hint as my eyes remain transfixed on her. Now I'm the one looking over her shoulder. Past her hair tucked behind the ear turned in my direction, I can see the palest shade of rose come in on her olive-toned cheeks. She's blushing. A smile creeps on my face as I notice, my hand lifting to conceal it as I look straight ahead again. I feel warm and flustered inside, too, as the bell signaling the start of class now rings. The teacher sits at his desk, and the conversations of the students around Jamie and I quiet down. He begins making marks on a paper, likely taking attendance of the class. "He's back today," I'm able to make out him murmuring aloud to himself. Is that about me? I take my mind off of it by resuming my doodling. "All right, notebook away, Matthew," the teacher commands a few moments later. I look up without a word to see he's now on his feet, moving around to the front of his desk. I comply, closing the cover of my notebook and tucking it back into my bag on the floor. He's been pretty strict about me not drawing in class, ever since I was working on homework with Eric at the skate park one day and doodled a stick figure hanging by a noose at the top of my page just to get a kick out of him. I had forgotten to erase it away by the time I turned the assignment in, though, and that caused a whole mess. I had to prove to our school's counselor I wasn't harming myself by rolling up my sleeves and all of that. If only he could see me now, huh? Either way, I got a good talking to about not making jokes of that kind of thing that day, after promising that's all it was meant to be, between my friend and me. For the few opening minutes of today's world history class, the teacher introduces what the plan is for the lesson ahead. In time, though, the classroom door opens, and someone unseen seems to request that the teacher steps out to meet with them briefly. The teacher thus excuses himself and passes out of the doorway and out of sight, the door closing behind him. Accordingly, numerous conversations arise at the classroom's tables again. Myself, I sneak my notebook back out. I want to take this chance to get to a proper stopping spot if I can. Jamie swiftly comes to mind again, her interest in my drawing. I glance back over in her direction, and sure enough, she's turned toward me, and we make eye contact again. Only this time, she almost forces out a nervous but friendly half-smile to me, rather than turn away with assumed embarrassment. Her gaze is comforting now, and I do my best to reflect the look back to her. But the silence between us still feels tense, and I'm the one who looks away this time. Not long after I do, I hear over the chatter around me a couple of chairs shift over the floor, as if kids at another table further back behind me somewhere are getting up. I glance over my shoulder to see them. Two guys, imposingly bigger than me, now on their feet. Besides them, everyone else in the room has remained seated at their tables, just talking with the others around them. Feeling vulnerable, I defensively lower my pencil to the table but keep it clutched anxiously in my fist. The guys, who I recognize from experience as trouble for me, gesture and then approach in my direction. I know the name of one of them, the taller, stockier, jock-looking one with short-combed hair, a plain black shirt, and blue basketball shorts is Marcus. The other guy with him I'm less familiar with, though. He's wearing camo cargo pants and a dark brown pullover hoodie with a god-awfully ugly buzz cut. Before it fully processes, they're here, right next to me. Knowing Marcus already from his criticisms of my appearance in the past, I'm already fully on guard and angered by his unwelcomed presence by the time he opens his mouth to mockingly say, "Hey, lovebird, how'd your date with Sarah go?" My eyes shoot away from him and his asinine question. Of course Kyle would have blabbed and made a laughingstock of the shame I subjected myself to last week with the people around him. Of fucking course Marcus would be a part of Kyle's circle of friends. It wouldn't surprise me at this point if every piece of cancerous scum in Helsing High was friends with Kyle. Dreadfully, my cold shoulder isn't deterring Marcus to leave me alone. "If you're not going to tell me, maybe you've got a love letter to read in that notebook you've got," he says, before swiping my notebook out from under my nose quicker than I can prevent it. He passes it roughly to Buzzcut, who's taken a seat at the end of the table across the aisle from Jamie's and mine. When class started, that seat was still vacant while the blonde white girl assigned to the farther seat of that table was, and still is, there. I can't imagine her feeling any more comfortable with this than I am. Honestly, I'm completely stunned that they'd be as brazen as this. Sure, Marcus has called me unsavory names before, and I've been able to hear him and Buzzcut snickering to themselves at their table in this class at times, but this is the first time anyone has gotten physical with either me or my things. The only response I can muster to their actions is, "The hell," venomously under my breath. I don't dare look up to Marcus. I keep my eyes no higher than his waist, but I can just tell he's probably flashing a smug, predatory grin right now. Buzzcut at the neighboring table begins thumbing through my notebook, flipping through its pages as carelessly as he pleases. Who knows where his goddamn hands have been? I'm just within range to hear the blonde girl next to him, who he imposed himself on by taking the seat next to her, say with a passive lack of conviction, "Hey, if that's not yours, then you should give it back." I shouldn't overlook being thankful that at least someone's trying to do something, that at least one person in this school is willing to show some morals against those devoid of them. But Buzzcut shoots back, "Hey, we're all friends here. I'm just taking a look." And that's that. Not another word arises from her or anyone else. Not that I'd expect otherwise. I can't expect anyone else to be a hero here. I know that if anyone is going to stand up for me, it's got to be myself. "I'll never be friends with you," I bitterly retort at whoever the hell this Buzzcut kid is. My words tremble and are still concealed under my breath to not make a scene, but I know that it was at least audible. Regardless, he pretends not to hear me as Marcus then toys. "Ah, look, he doesn't want to be friends. Finding anything juicy in their bin? Any mushy, lovey-dovey crap?" By now, I'm squeezing my pencil in my hand so hard it feels like it's about to snap. I've never quite felt anger as hotly as this before. My vision begins to blur and I start to feel faint. I just want this to stop. Buzzcut Kid reports back to Marcus's question. "No, just a bunch of gay drawings." "All right, let's go. Teacher might be back soon," Marcus instructs, realizing his fun has ran its course. Buzzcut Ben stands with a huff and hands my notebook back to Marcus, who then tosses it back onto my table in front of me. Ben seems to have swiftly passed back to his table as he's already out of view, but Marcus doesn't likewise leave before verbally hitting me harder than he ever has before. Sooner than I realize to defend myself from, he's grabbed a hold of my scarf, which has been hanging loosely from my shoulders since unwrapping it in English class, and yanks it off of me. He scoffs while looking at it in his hands and says, "No wonder why Sarah turns you down. Fag. Finally, Marcus leaves, but not before tossing the scarf back at me into my lap. Shaken, ashamed, and on the verge of crying in class, I jerk my scarf off of me and stuff it hastily into my backpack on the ground. I hide my face in the curl of my arm resting on the table, and at last I feel the pencil in my opposite hand snap from the pressure of my clenched fist. I wish I wasn't here anymore. I never should have come to school today. I never should come to school again. I never should go anywhere again. No matter where Marcus and Ben went when they left, it surely wasn't to where they belong. I want Marcus and his piss-ugly rat of a friend to burn in hell. But that's just when a hand comes to help pull me out of the fire I'm burning in. Troubled head still tucked deep into the crook of my arm, I feel a hand gently grip my opposite limb just below the elbow. Emotionally, I flinch at first, but my nerves soon ease and I turn my head just enough to peek out to where the hand is coming from. It's Jamie. This girl I felt a serious attraction for since the first day of class is leaning in toward me, a look of sympathy sullying her pretty face and her hand on me. It wasn't on my mind at all while this happened, but she was right next to me this whole time, and she witnessed everything. She says quietly in her soft, sheepish voice, "Matthew, listen to me. Fuck them." I can't help but tense again momentarily at her choice of words. I know well that this isn't the time to be sensitive to profanity, but I've always been just that. I may cuss every now and then in my own head, but I never express such vulgarity. Once I get over that, however, I feel comforted that she's reaching out. It's lamentable that this is what breaks the ice between us, though. I raise my head just enough to show that Jamie has my attention, but all I can manage to thank her for her compassion is a pained and timid whimper. Her hand releases me, and I take the chance to tuck the broken pieces of my pencil back into my jacket pocket now that I'm free again. After hiding away the evidence of how hurt I truly was, and I guess still am, I can tell that her gaze is fixed on my hands, watching them with concern as they tremble from my continued emotional distress and nervousness. I'd have never imagined that this may be what gets us talking to each other, but despite wherever this may go, I feel terribly apprehensive of what, if anything, I should actually say to her. I mean, what can I say? Sorry, I'm just a pathetic mess of a loser who spent his morning talking to shadows in the woods and will likely be alone for the rest of his life. The last thing I'd want is to scare her away. But that concern just about comes true without even saying a word when her eyes shift up from my hands to my arms, and I suddenly see pained emotion swell behind them. Her brow lifts, her lips part ever so slightly, and I swear it's like the color in her face drains and goes pale. I glance down to uncover what made her look so spooked, and notice that the jacket sleeve over my left arm got pushed up, likely when I reached down to stuff my scarf into my bag, exposing my self-inflicted cut wound. My eyes go wide in a panic. Hurriedly, I shove my sleeve back down and clutch onto it at the wrist with my free hand, futilely, as I know undeniably that she's already seen it. So I just sit, frozen and terrified. I can't bear to look at Jamie anymore. What is she going to think of me, knowing now that I'm a freak so troubled that I would come to hurting myself? That's when I feel her hand again, on my shoulder this time. Hey, Matthew, is everything all right? Please, talk to me. Her soft, angelic voice about moves me to tears, from both the comfort I find in it and the guilt of her normally smooth speech now broken with stutters. I whine out under my breath, conflicted, still unsure if it'd be right to open up the truth to her. I mean, again, she witnessed everything that just happened with Marcus and his asshole friend. She should already have a good idea of what the truth is. Still without a word, though, I at least turn to look at her face to face again, perhaps to see if I can get any reassuring read on where her stance on me is, where she's coming from. With her hand still on my shoulder, I see nothing but compassion and care in her eyes. I feel as if I'm seeing clear into her soul now, and my God, is she beautiful. The teacher finally re-enters the room as I remain lost in my eye contact with Jamie. He seems to begin moving ahead with the lecturing of today's class, but honestly, I'm completely zoned out to anything that isn't Jamie right now, like we're in a dimension of our own. Insecurely, my eyes drop down, now looking half at the linoleum floor between Jamie and me, and half being drawn to what I can see of her short legs under the table. Her thighs look so soft, like a couple of throw pillows pressed together, and her tight faded cotton jeans fit so well around them. My head can't help but feel heavy the more I think about it. I feel her grip on my shoulder tighten to recall my attention, and I accordingly look back up into her eyes. There's much more of a sense of resolve found in them now, telling me that whatever she's about to say, it's going to come from nowhere less than the heart. She gently sighs despite her confident complexion, as if letting out the last of the hesitation and anxiety in her to talk to me, and I mean seriously talk to me. Whether by design or by the heat of the moment, she's already come this far. Much farther than anyone else since Andrew has come. After a final pause, she finds her words. Matthew, I want you to trust me. I know what I saw. So if you want someone to talk to about what's going on, I want you to feel free to talk to me. She says this quietly, lined with a worried tone, to hint that this is just between us and doesn't want to draw the attention of anyone else. Her voice is still shaken up from seeing the wound of my cut, and I appreciate both her sympathy and her discretion, but I still just don't know how much I should open up, if at all. I felt so guarded with my depressive feelings for so long. If I tell her how dark things have gotten for me since just last year, and how my increasingly fragile heart is like a cancer eating at me from the inside, she may think I'm just a selfish creep who should man up and swallow my feelings like a bitter pill like everyone else. If I don't, well, then I preserve the mystery of not knowing. I preserve this interest she's showing in me now. I don't have to soil this chance I have to grow something beautiful with her by opening my mouth and letting whatever feelings spill out of it now. I don't have to soil this like I soiled things with Sarah. Her hand slides from my shoulder toward my back. Why do you care so much about me? I respond on impulse alone. Absolutely no thought went into asking her that. It was as if my goddamn mouth was tired of waiting for me to make up my mind on what I should say, my first actual words to her all day. She snaps her hand off of me and holds it against her body now, as if I bit it, and I can see pain form in her eyes that I'd so callously question her. My eyes shift away as I feel immense pressure in my heart for this mistake. I fucked up another potential connection with another beautiful girl. Because I've been there, Matthew. I know what you're feeling. I know what it's like to feel alone. She still keeps her voice as quiet as she can, but I can tell as her tone cracks that I've made her hurt. I look back toward her to show that I'm sorry, but she's turned away from me again, just as she's been. I bet she can't stand to look at me anymore. I bet she had it in her head that I'm some pity case for her, because she might have something in common with me and might have been through something similar as me before. I bet she was looking at me as someone she can fix to make her feel better about herself. I bet she really cares. I bet she genuinely cares for the well-being of another she sees drowning in the same water she's in. I concede. Okay, but not here, not now. I need time to figure out what I want to say, but I trust you. I'll talk to you when I'm ready, okay? With no immediate response from her, I turn my attention back toward the teacher at the front of the class. Just as I do, though, Jamie, now out of view, practically leaps toward me in her chair and latches her arms around the one of mine closest to her. The teacher has his sight directed toward the other side of the room as Jamie nuzzles her face into my shoulder while hugging my right arm. My God, I can feel her chest pressing against me in her embrace. The pressure in my heart goes aflutter once again. She retracts her face off my shoulder just a bit, arms still wrapped around mine for now. Take your time. Thank you, she coos softly. And with that, she lets go, sitting back fully in her own chair again. Too bad that feeling of her on my arm couldn't have lasted longer, but any longer, and the teacher may have picked up on something going on. Even though, that doesn't stop me from smiling moving ahead, as I blissfully begin tuning in to what the teacher is saying now. Jamie managed to pull off the improbable in bringing out the rainbow after the thrashing storms of the past weekend I had. I owe so much to her for that, for the love I feel refilling the void in my heart left by Sarah's rejection. The rest of today's history class passes without Jamie or I saying much more, just how it usually has been between us. The next approximate half hour goes by with Marcus and Buzzcut's bullying of me feeling long in the past, ever since Jamie played savior to me. Despite a foundation of connection between us now, though, there's still tension present, as if the elephant at our table still hasn't left its seat yet. But now, I believe it's more so from the abeyance of what we started here being held until I'm able to find the time and collect myself to open up to her, rather than an unwillingness for either of us to come out of our shells anymore. The bell rings to dismiss us to the next period of the day, and as I pull my backpack up into my lap to leave, I notice the blonde girl from the table beside Jamie and me move to the front of the room and grab the teacher's attention. Jamie rises after I do and follows behind me like a ghost as I make my way out the door. Tried as I may have, I couldn't overhear at all what the blonde girl may be talking with the teacher about, but I'd be happy to see Marcus and his buzzcut friend face consequences from the hands of a virtuous bystander. At the nearest intersection in the hallways outside of history class, Jamie pulls ahead from behind me and makes a meek attempt to grab my attention amidst all the commotion of other students making their ways too. Before cornering up the nearest set of stairs, Jamie takes the time to show me a comforting smile, give a gentle wave, and say, "Bye," in an almost whisper. By the time I wave back and say, "Yeah, I'll talk to you later," she's already a step or two up the stairs. My eyes don't leave her, though, until she turns the corner on the middle landing and moves out of sight. I hope the rest of the day treats her well. Someone as precious as her deserves only the best. Left alone with my thoughts again, I move along with others on autopilot, heading in the opposite direction toward my school gym. Now that I'm thinking more on it and realizing it had gone largely overlooked and disregarded before from being so selfish and stuck in my head, but Jamie really has always had a strong air of loneliness about her, comparable to how I'm sure I impress on others. It's just taken till now for that to really sink in. Again, we met as the year started for us as sophomores just about 2 months ago. I remember that being the first time I ever saw her. If I did ever see her around school in the year prior, I certainly didn't recognize her anymore after summer came and went. The only people I've seen her talk to are either the history teacher when needed, or me at our table. When the period lets out, she silently disappears up the stairs around the corner from the room, not to be seen again until class reconvenes the next day, always in her seat already by the time I arrive. Apart from her beautifully average girl next door looks, shadows seem to have more of an impact on the world than her. She seems intent on keeping as low of a profile as possible, being as unnoticeable as possible. Maybe she truly does understand me in a way that no one else not named Andrew does. Maybe she truly does know where a kid as withdrawn as me comes from. What I've been through. What we've been through. Who knows where two kids like us may end up, but I'm thinking I'd really like to do what I can to see this through. About an hour and one more class period later, the school bells ring out to declare our freedom for today's lunch hour. I make my exit out of French class, the language of love, and head toward the cafeteria, hoping that my class's proximity to it allows me to beat most of the rush there as usual. I can respect the practical and cultural reasons for most others to choose Spanish over French for their secondary language class, but I appreciate that we have options, and I've always been the type to follow my heart rather than my head. Nearing the center of the cafeteria where the line of students stretches back to, I see Andrew. Recognizing his tall frame, slick dark hair, and thick framed glasses already present in the approximate spot we usually run into each other when lunch starts. He glances over and sees me approaching, wasting little time before lighting up and greeting me. "Hey, Matthew. So glad to see you. I got real worried when you weren't here on Friday, especially after the day before." "Yeah, I decided to call it an early weekend to take some time for myself. Sorry I didn't have a chance to tell you. It was kinda just a spontaneous thing," I explain. We make our way into the cafeteria line. "No, man. I'm sorry for pushing you so hard into talking to Kyle's friend. The only thing I was thinking was to encourage you to take a chance on connecting with a girl, but that unfortunately backfired. I should have known, with some of the friends he keeps. Anyway, I'm just glad to see you here on the grind again, and you're even smiling too. So, what's new?" Have I been smiling? I haven't realized it all, but clearly it's not something I can hide from Andrew either. He always can read me like a book. Actually, speaking of connecting with girls, the craziest thing happened in second period today. I sit next to a real cute one in world history. Her name is Jamie. She saw I was looking a bit down today after the weekend, and we actually got talking a little bit. She really helped cheer me up about things. It's not anything yet, but it kind of feels natural talking to her, you know? And I think we might have a lot in common, so I'm looking forward to seeing where things can go. It's never any problem unraveling my feelings for Andrew. By now, we're about halfway up the lunch line. I'm able to observe other students moving away from the cafeteria counter with sub sandwiches and side dishes on their trays, cueing me in on what's on the menu today. Jamie? Jamie Summerfield? Andrew asks with an air of intrigue. Yeah, that's right, I respond, equally intrigued to how he would know her. No way, Andrew exclaims. She's in my biology class right after lunch. Matt, listen. For as long as I've known her, I can't think of anyone else who'd get along better with you. The only reason I never mentioned her before is because what were the odds the two of you share a class too? If you didn't, I'd just be telling you about a random girl you'd never meet, you know? But no, seriously, Matt, I think you guys are exactly what both of you could use in life right now. On her own in class, she often looks the way you tend to. Together, though, I think you'd be great friends for each other, and an even cuter couple down the line. Wow, really? I meekly reply. Andrew and I are at the cafeteria counter now, he ahead of me. Definitely, man. Forget about all that mess with Kyle's friend and make your move on Jamie. You won't regret it. I promise this time, he assures me. Behind Andrew, I grab and load a lunch tray up with a sandwich labeled as honey ham, paper dishes holding portions of mashed potatoes and green beans, and a pint of 2% milk. With both of our lunches obtained and paid for, I follow him back out till we're near the doorway between the cafeteria and main entrance, out of the way of many more students pouring in for their grub too. So hey, Andrew calls out to me. Rock Band 3 is only a couple weekends away now, but I've still got to have you over to bring an end to our Rock Band 2 career with a real banger. I'm so excited for the Flaming Lips to finally join the game. So, when you want to do that? I adjust to Andrew's change in topic, him wanting to make a plan with me. Personally, I'm looking forward to playing Rilo Kiley the most, I retort with a friendly smile. But, yeah, I've got to see how this week goes, and I'll get with you later when I'm ready to make a plan. Cool. So, want to follow me out to eat with the normal crew? Eric and Michael missed you on Friday, too. No Kyle this time. You're not the only one who needed a break from him, believe me. Andrew invites me along. I appreciate it, but I'll need more time before I feel comfortable out at that table again, I'm afraid. What happened out there is still too fresh for me, I assert. Hey man, I totally understand, and the others will too. Still though, we'll be up on the roof after eating like usual if you want to meet us up there instead. Your call though. I express my appreciation for Andrew and his support. With that though, we share catch-you-laters before he makes his way outside through the main lobby doors before us, and I instead head down to the farthest end of the hall, to the eastmost side exit of the school. When I reach these doors, I take all my lunch foods in hand and drop the cumbersome tray off on top of a trash can by the door. Whoever employed by the school will take care of it later when they come across it. Back in the chilly, clouded weather outside, I pass through Helsing High's east side courtyard and parking lot to reach a cozy bus stop shelter on the sidewalk lining the school's 40th Avenue perimeter. Knowing that the buses aren't scheduled to come by around this time, of course, I take a seat on the bench, confident that I can eat here in isolation without being mistaken for a passenger. As I unwrap my sandwich to start digging into the cold ham and lettuce on bread growing stale, I keep stimulated by watching the occasional car that passes by, envious of the freedom these drivers possess while I'm stuck in a school living a life I'm disgruntled with, ever on the inside looking out, naturally. I also take this time to further process and reflect on the chain of events, the butterfly effect that led from Thursday, and how things are continuing to develop from it today. How Kyle bullying me into emotionally shitting myself in front of Sarah inspired Marcus to make a mockery of me today, proving Kyle made sure the rest of his asshole friends in school know how much of a kick it was seeing me in the most shameful and dejected state I've ever been in my life. And then how that inspired Jamie, my cute but just as reserved as me world history classmate, to finally break through the 2 months of built-up awkward tension between us to give me what I've been needing and craving most in my teenage life. Positive female attention and affection. Before I know it, I'm scraping the paper dish at hand for the last of my portion of potatoes and emptying my carton of its last drop of milk. I stand, discard all my trash into the nearby bus stop trash can, and retrace my steps back to the school. Once in sight again, I see the tray I left behind hasn't yet been touched before looking toward a clock on the opposite wall. There's about half an hour left of lunch still, a fair amount of time to see if Andrew and the gang have made their way up to the roof yet so I can join and hang with them up there for a while. Before heading upstairs again, I move to a vending machine nestled away in the corner under the nearest set of stairs where all the skinny, white, baggy hoodie and cargo pants wearing stoner kids and the future junkie girls they take advantage of like to hang out. I order and retrieve a can of Sprite from the dispenser of the machine, avoiding eye contact with any of the sketchy kids in the vicinity before going up. On the second floor again and down the hall back toward the center of the building, I reach the skyway that leads over the cafeteria. Across it, branching off from the west side upstairs hallway, is where the door out to the roof is found. As I move through, I keep my eyes in the direction of the alcoved bay windows as I pass them that let the gray light of day into the skyway, looking out over the cafeteria's roof and main courtyard below. I stroll on, keeping a careful distance from the other students eating their lunches up here, not wanting to warrant any attention as I pass by. But then I stop dead in my tracks. In one of the Skyway's last bay windows, my eyes catch and keep a hold on Jamie Summerfield, sitting alone on the tiled ledge in the nook, staring perhaps forlornly out the window over the indistinct neighborhood across the street. In time, she seems to sense the presence of a young man stopped and staring at her as she soon turns her head and sees me too. Her face barely changes as our eyes meet, but in the most subtle way, I do notice the corners of her mouth just so slightly curl to express a look of recognition, comfort, and welcome. I approach with a flutter in my chest, hastily gathering words in my head to offer a greeting. Hey, Jamie. May I join you? Sure, she answers softly. I actually was just thinking about you. Intrigued to explore just what is on her mind, and not deterred away from doing so, I slide my backpack off my shoulders to set it and my unopened can of Sprite in the alcove of the window, before I follow suit. The seat I take on the bay window's ledge is across from Jamie, our bodies facing each other, some 5 feet apart. It's pretty cool, finally seeing you outside of class like this, I express, trying to open up and break the ice. Oh, so you've never noticed me before, have you? She waxes wistfully. I usually see you around now and then. Has she? I mean, our school isn't a big one at all, so the chances are pretty high, but still, I feel incredibly apologetic that I've never recognized her outside of class before. Just how long has she been around, though? How long has she gone unnoticed by me? She's clearly more observant than I am. Usually, you're looking down, and I've always just kinda been too shy to say anything. Jamie finishes before absently staring off in the distance behind me, the air of comfort we started with quickly turning anxious as she restlessly falls silent again. And I do too, for a moment. What do I do? I must be making Jamie uncomfortable, I think. I should just let her be and carry on my way to the roof before I trip over my words and screw things up with her, even more than I already have. I grab hold of my backpack and brace my legs to stand. I'll leave you be, Jamie. I'm sorry I imposed on you. I excuse myself. I freeze full stop again when I hear Jamie say, with heightened panic in her voice, "No, please, don't go. You're not imposing at all. I'm happy you're here with me now." Taken aback, I relax myself back down again, seeing now the frozen facade around her crack and chip away, her warm compassion starting to show through underneath. However, she still hesitates, showing clearly on her face a mental struggle to find what she wants to say. It's on me, then, to reach out and help her find a starting place from which she can find what appears she wants to connect with me on. So, I offer some words. If I may ask, Jamie, what brings you up here? It, must be pretty nice, getting a whole window seat to yourself. She hums, gently shrugs, and turns her gaze back out the window, still seemingly unable to look at me directly yet, but I can sense that she wants to. I can sense that she wants to open up to me, but can't find the means to, just how I was faring in class with her this morning. With comforting her in mind, I begin to scoot closer to her on the tiled ledge. Just a few inches are covered before I pause, closing in on her, though. When I see her hand jump and grab a grip on her hoodie sleeve, her eyes following. She starts, then stops. After a final moment of apprehension, she pushes her sleeves up to the elbows, one at a time, still without saying a word, but at last her eyes light with purpose. My eyes, meanwhile, widen from what they see. Scars of cuts line the skin of her forearms. There must be a dozen of them at least, between both arms. I've seen her without a jacket on a handful of times in class, sure, but I've never noticed this before. Maybe it's the state that my mind is in now, or now that I've done it to myself, or now that she's fully bearing it all for me to see, trauma and all. But how? How can someone so pure be this scarred? Like I said, Matthew, I know what I saw in class today, so I'll tell you the story of mine if you tell me why you have one on your arm too, one that I know wasn't there before. Something must have happened with those jock-looking assholes in class today. Like, who was the Sarah that they bullied you about? What happened to you? She chokes out in distress. A swell of emotion boils up in me. Every doubt I had about her, every thought that's crossed my mind about self-harm, every ounce of bitterness I've developed against the degradation of my high school teenage life, I want to just throw it all away and throw myself into the arms of this beautiful rose blossoming in front of me. In each other's arms we can find love and comfort together. I'm sure of it. We can protect each other from the world and society that so clearly has hurt us both beyond what can simply be seen. And I want her to see that too, if she doesn't already. Yeah, okay. I'll tell you. I'll tell you everything. I'm ready. I'm ready, and I trust you, Jamie. The following few minutes blur by as I share my account of the weekend I've had, paraphrasing to her the thoughts I've had in my head all morning. In this bay window we share, despite the weather outside, I warm more and more, enchanted as my eyes remain locked to Jamie's and feeling drawn into a world as if all to ourselves again, inching ever closer to her both physically and emotionally. I find myself about in the middle of the ledge by the time I finish unbottling myself and letting all the overflow spill out of my heart and mind. I'm close enough to touch her now, if I reach all the way out. I see, Jamie empathizes. It makes sense, what you've been through now. I'm sorry I've been too reserved to reach out and be here for you any sooner. I know too well where you come from now. I appreciate her sentiment greatly, but figure it's time for Jamie to tell her story, tell the tale of her scars now, as she proposed. So, Jamie, where do you come from? What's your story? I prompt, wanting to move on from my own thoughts for a change. Jamie gazes downward with unease and recovers her arms with her sleeves, but in turn begins to unravel the bandages she's seemingly had wrapped tightly around her guarded and wounded heart. When I was really young, my parents separated and abandoned me when neither of them wanted to bother with being a single parent. One day, my mom dropped me off at my aunt's, and I haven't seen either of them since then. Not like my aunt would let them see me again if they tried, but that was like 10 years ago, so I'm sure they don't care. I wasn't even in school yet, but I knew something was wrong, and grew up believing something was wrong with me, growing up with only one parent, and that parent not being either my mom or my dad. I couldn't process it in any kind of positive way, so I grew up incredibly withdrawn and antisocial, just trying my best to figure out what was wrong with me and my family, or lack of. All I knew at the time was the emptiness and pain my parents leaving me left me with, and the way my aunt became very protective and smothering with me trying to make up for it. I wanted nothing to do with anything that had a chance to worsen the way I felt, so I isolated myself and tried my best to just get by all on my own. But that itself was tough, when others labeled me as the emo loner girl in school, and bullies started giving me a hard time for it, as if it was my fault. So I felt like I couldn't trust anyone, and that led me to start lashing out. Not even Jade, my friend I made in middle school who likely just reached out of pity for me at the time, even if we are like best friends now. Not even she could ease the shit I was bottling up inside. There's her language again. Though I shudder for a moment at her profanity, I dare not interrupt or make an immediate issue out of it. Though, if things go the way I want them to with her, I should address how expressions of vulgarity make me feel sooner or later. Jamie continues as I tune back in. Jade came here to Helsing, But I wound up in Douglas when we started high school. I do live closer to here too, but I chose to enroll with Douglas solely to pursue a photography class taught there by Charles Price, a pretty popular artist in Denver back in the day. Though he's retired now, I grew up feeling a deep connection to his dark, gothic, expressionist art. When I found out he was teaching art classes here in Sinton, including photography, which I'm really into, I couldn't pass up the chance to get in, even if it was at Douglas across town. But it turned out, of course, that separating from my only real friend, Jade, was the biggest mistake I could have made. The bullying got really bad, a lot worse in a new school, surrounded by new people, and without anyone there to help me through it anymore. I reached a snapping point one day, earlier this spring. This preppy bitch at Douglas told me during lunch that no one's ever gonna love a cow like me, if not even my mom could love me. And the next thing I knew, I was on top of her, crying and screaming and hitting her. It was a blur. I just went blank until teachers were pulling me off of her. I was suspended, and my aunt was mad that I lashed out, and that was the strongest I've ever hated myself. I decided I couldn't take it anymore, and I cut myself. I got in a bath while my aunt was at work and cut myself as many times as I could before passing out from the blood loss. Luckily, though, my aunt came home just in time to find me before I either bled too much or slipped deeper into the tub and drowned. As mad as my aunt was for getting suspended, and as mad as I was at her back, she saved my life. Physically, I recovered after a few days in the hospital, but I spent much longer in the hospital's mental ward. That took me into the summer, this summer, and I never went back to Douglas. I didn't even get into the photography class I wanted. As I got better and made amends with my aunt, we decided it would be best for me to transfer here when this year started, so I could be with Jade again. Jamie's eyes, which had welled up not long after starting her tale, start to spill with tears. The pain she's felt all her life is clear in her face and her words, not hiding any of it from me anymore. She puts her hands, covered by her overly long sweatshirt sleeves, over her face for comfort as she tries to recompose herself. I figure I can help in comforting her too, so I take the chance before me to make my move and finish scooting my way across the ledge toward her, to the point I'm right next to her now. Our shoulders and hips touch, the closest I've ever been to her now, and in the heat of this moment, I feel no nervousness about it. I'm reassured by everything she's said and done that I'm wanted here, that I belong here. Sure enough, just like she did in class, when she feels me right next to her now too, she wraps her arms around mine like a hug and presses her wet cheeks into my jacketed shoulder. With my free hand, I close it around her wrist and rub it with my thumb to soothe her. It seems like she appreciates it when she hugs my arm even tighter. She then lets go, though, so she can finish telling her story. She lifts her face off of me to create separation again, but I'm drawn to maintain contact with her, so I move my arm over her shoulders. She doesn't reject this advance, and it feels so right. Relaxing her head and really making herself comfortable and at home in the crook of my arm She continues, When I was finally released from the mental ward and the school year started, not only was I reunited with Jade, but I met you too. And I could tell, just from looking at you, Matthew, that you'd be able to get me in a way no one else I've known ever has. In the best way possible, looking at you felt as close to looking in a mirror as you can get, without there actually being one. I knew that I could understand you, and that you would understand me, and that we could be really good for each other. I just needed some way, something to push me over my fear of talking and getting to know, well, anyone, but especially you, to get over my anxiety of meeting such a nice and cute and genuine person, and not have to worry about losing someone I care about in my life again. When I saw you get bullied in class today, just as I was before, that was the push I needed, to reach out, to help, to let you know that you don't need to feel as alone as I did last year. I like you too much to ever let you feel that way, Matthew. She finishes and nuzzles deeper into my arm. We really are alike. We're so alike it astounds me. And it's astounding how, finally, after all this time, we've found each other. We've found each other and have shown ourselves to be exactly what both of us are looking for, it seems. Exactly what both of us need, it seems. As I realize this, I tighten my arm over her into a firm side hug and grab her hand to hold it, hoping she sees things the same way I do. Jamie reciprocates the affection by making herself even more comfortable in my embrace. I think she realizes it. You'll never be alone again either, Jamie. I make sure she knows. Much too soon, lunchtime comes to an end. After the bells ring, against our will to stay together forever, Jamie and I pull ourselves apart, promising to look forward to meeting again tomorrow as soon as second period comes back around again. Finally, a tomorrow to look forward to. The last few minutes of lunch, having since firmly decided to forget about trying to meet Andrew on the roof for today, saw us connecting over lighter subjects while sharing the can of Sprite I bought earlier, still maintaining close, affectionate contact. Now that we're on our feet afterward, though, she stops herself in the middle of saying goodbye. Oh, Matthew, do you still have your scarf with you? I hesitate before confirming that I do, still stuffed in my backpack from earlier, unable to figure why she's asking about it. She sees my hand on my backpack, though, it still resting on the ledge of the bay window we shared our heart-to-heart in, and takes that as an invite to help herself to it. Without a word, she unzips my backpack and pulls my scarf out of it, untouched since it was so carelessly soiled by Marcus putting his hands on it. It looks great on you, she tells me softly, before kissing it and wrapping it around my neck again. I'm stood dumbfounded by the purity of her kindness, how a simple kiss from her onto a piece of wool can cleanse the abuse I suffered earlier. Before I know it, she says, "Bye," with a flirty wink, and turns to leave to wherever she's going next. Again, like after history, I stare, mindlessly watching her leave until she turns a corner out of sight again, finally snapping me out of my love-struck stupor. If she's so keen on kissing my scarf before wrapping it around my neck, I wonder if it'll be long before she cuts out the middleman and kisses my neck directly. After I finally sling my backpack back over my shoulders, ready to leave myself, I pause one last time before moving away from the bay window. I can feel the folded mirror I found in Necro Hill's forest still in my pocket from this morning, and think for a moment about what I can do with it. I had forgotten to discard of it earlier. I think it'd be nice to leave something here, to signify this spot as the place where Jamie and I truly connected with each other for the first time, and with all the talk of how alike we are in tastes and background, having likened it to practically having been on opposite sides of a mirror this whole time, how well this in particular would fit is not lost on me. No longer will we look into mirrors and only see ourselves alone. Now we can look in mirrors and find each other in them too. I remove the item from my pocket and gently toss it into the corner of the window where we were sitting before heading on down the hall, on the way to my penultimate class of the day. I know likely that the mirror won't last long before someone else grabs it or throws it away, but I'm happy knowing there's meaning in my symbolic gesture. I'm happy. About an hour and a half later, with a smile still on my face, school is out for the day. What a roller coaster this weekend, and today alone, has been. I exit my biology class, near where my old locker is, and pass back through the second floor hallway and skyway again by where Jamie and I bared our scars to each other just earlier, heading to the school roof, for real this time. I happened across Andrew in passing between my geometry and biology classes earlier, coming back in from a walkway outside where my geometry class is, in a separate building on the far side of the gym. I apologized for missing him during lunch and requested to meet him on the roof after school instead, so we can chat and catch up some more then. He obliged with his usual hospitality, and I'm going to meet him there now. After pushing my way through the heavy metal door out to the roof, the final threshold holding me in from the fresh air outside, I'm in the light of Sinton's overcast sky again. Mildly shadowed by an awning above, I spot Andrew, with Eric as well, already awaiting me by a picnic table on the far side of this section of the school's roof that students have free access to. Andrew waves as I approach, and Eric nods his dark ginger curly mop in my direction as well. Hey, man, I noticed your things aren't in our locker anymore, just a bit ago. Everything okay? Eric greets me as I get closer, casually reclined on the rooftop picnic table I'm nearing, Element skateboard against his lap. Oh, yeah, everything's cool. I just wanted to bring my things home with me and lighten my load a bit, you know? Figured I can save some time in the mornings by just carrying what I need with me. Locker's all yours now, I answer him, before turning my attention to Andrew, stood next to me now. So what's new, man? He asks friendlily, getting right to why I asked him to meet up here when I did. So, yeah. You remember me saying I met Jamie in class earlier? I actually came across her again, sitting on her own during lunch, the first time I've ever seen her outside of class. So, I took the chance, sat down with her, and we talked. A lot. About some really deep stuff. The talking led to touching and hugging, and I really think this could be the start of something here. I blather on a bit, hoping that Andrew follows along well enough. Nice, man. Eric is the first to pipe in as I finish. He's shifting forward a bit on the bench of the picnic table. Yeah, bud. I did notice she was smiling more in 5th period today, and I mean a lot more. Now I know why. I guess it's a good thing that I don't think she knows you and I are like best buds. Otherwise, I bet that she would have been trying to get some gossip about you out of me. Ha. But yeah, no. I'm really happy for you, man. Happy that you found someone who's going to be good for you. I'd wish you luck on the two of you getting close, but I've got a feeling you're not going to need it, Andrew says with encouraging support. I hope so. I've already come this far. I'm going to be doing everything I can to make sure I don't mess this up, I say aloud, to have something to hold myself accountable to, if nothing else. A moment passes before Andrew changes subject. Now, Eric over here was just about to show us something while we were waiting, he declares, putting Eric on the spot with the point of his thumb. Yeah, Eric hypes up. Check it. I've been working on kick-flipping into crooks at the park. Let me see if I can hit it here, he says as he grabs his board off his lap and stands. I eye something of a concrete ledge further down on the roof he'll no doubt be aiming for, along the wall of the skyway this roof area runs alongside, just under knee-high and stained with the skate wax of Eric and other skaters who come up here. He gets away with this without problem, due immediately to there not being anyone else around currently, but also to the general lack of supervision and secluded, closed-in feeling about this rooftop terrace. Where we are is just about level with the second floor itself, up only a few steps from it, closed in by walls on 3 sides, of the hallway with the door that leads out here on one, a classroom on the opposite side of that, and the skyway that connects the 2 halves of the school in between. The 4th side, facing north, is open, save of course for a fence that keeps us in for the sake of safety. If you can ignore the ugliness of the prison-like chain link, though, the view over the rest of the school is decent enough, and the open air is certainly refreshing. This rooftop lies directly over the cafeteria and an adjacent theater as well, 2 facilities known for always being noisy, but that likely doesn't even matter if the ceilings are as thick and solid as the walls are in this school. You'd likely be able to hold a metal concert up here and barely be able to hear it from the inside, so a little skateboarding certainly won't draw attention by noise alone. Ready, Eric gracefully mounts his board in his natural, regular stance and coasts toward the waxed ledge via inertia alone. He looks intently forward, shifting his feet in position for a kickflip as he nears the rooftop obstacle. He snaps the tail of his board against the surface of the roof and flicks with the opposite foot to flip the board for a kickflip, and while the front truck of the board makes it onto the edge of the ledge pinned by his front foot, the rest of his body doesn't make it on as his back foot, with the rest of his weight, lands back on the terrace floor he hopped off of. With disappointed body language, Eric kicks his board off the ledge and hops back on it, rolling back toward Andrew and me. On the way back, he repositions and pops for a kickflip a second time, this time landing the trick on flat ground. See, I've got kickflips down, but you guys already knew that. Let me go at it again just to make sure I've got the crooks locked in as well, Eric declares when within talking distance of Andrew and me again. We watch on as Eric pushes his board to approach the ledge again, this time ollieing straight up and pinching his front truck into a crux on the ledge, full weight up and on it successfully now. However, it's more of a crooked stall than a grind, if that's even what he was going for, as there's little to no distance moved once he's locked into the trick. Regardless, though, after a second, Eric pushes his weight back off the ledge again, rotating his body in the air with a backside 180 for a relatively clean switch landing. It may not have been what he was going for exactly, but that's how skating goes, and Andrew and I applaud him all the same. When Eric dismounts and pops his board up into his hand, he heads back toward us to give his thoughts. Man, I've got the kickflip down, I've got the crooks down, I just need to work on putting them together still. Either way, I'm hyped. I gotta break in these new indie trucks still, so I'm gonna head out and ride around town for a bit. I'll catch you later. With that, Eric fist bumps both Andrew and me before heading behind us, the metal door leading back inside being heard opening and closing in time. Just the two of us now. Andrew moves to the fence holding us on the roof, and after a brief pause to recollect my thoughts, I follow him over there as well. "There's the lucky girl, Matthew," he announces, after a while of people watching the students passing below, he looking out over the soccer field by the gym. I squint my eyes for a minute, trying to see what he's seeing, and in time, I do. I too spot the back of Jamie, past the soccer field and parking lot along 40th Avenue, recognizing the dark gray hoodie and cotton jeans that spin a spell in my arms just earlier today. My heart flutters as I watch her stroll up the sidewalk, away from the school toward Titchen. "You want to follow her? Find out where she lives?" Andrew seems to pose out of nowhere. Dumbfounded at his suggestion, I snap back out of staring at Jamie as she moves further and further away, none the wiser to my spontaneous spying. "Dude, what? No way. Jamie's a once-in-a-lifetime kind of girl. I may never meet someone like her again. I'm not going to do anything to ruin that. I don't want to make her feel stalked or smothered at all." I stammeringly answer his preposterous proposal. "Easy, man. I was just joking. I just saw the way you were looking at her was all. I just want to make sure you be careful with how you see her. I don't want to see your first ending the way mine did. But now that you mention it, maybe Jamie's the type who'd like to be smothered," he insensitively continues to tease. "Dude!" I exclaim to him back. I get that he's trying to ease the bit of awkward tension on him just standing by while I watch Jamie, who's now crossing 40th, eastward on Titchen in front of the Albertsons and Jack in the Box on the corner. But he's still being obscene in the face of my first love. "You know what I meant," he playfully defends. Within a few more fleeting seconds, the distant dot of Jamie's figure moves out of view, heading further east, the opposite direction from school that I live in. She must walk to and from school every day like I do. Damn it, Andrew was right. I am stalking her, but who could blame a curious mind like mine? We carry on for a few moments longer with simple small talk, but my comfort level doesn't return down to one that feels at ease after what Andrew is excusing his jokes. I usually don't know him to say such things, but I suppose I've never known the way he'd behave seeing his best friend on the cusp of his first romance either. My relationship with Andrew, with the experience he has with life stuff more vast than I, has often been him playing a big brother type of role to me. Usually I appreciate whatever wisdom he decides to share, but him seeming to test me and compare Jamie and me against how his first relationship with Rosa failed just rubs me as being rudely presumptuous. In the 8 years I've known him, though, I've never been given a reason to distrust him or misread the meaning of his words as anything other than supportive, no matter how they come off. Soon, unable to shake my discomfort, I excuse myself to start heading home. Andrew understands. It's been a big day for me, so we meld opposite hands and pat each other softly on the back in a brotherly handshake. Through the roof terrace's access door I return, leaving Andrew behind, reaching ground level again and exiting the school. On my walk home, straight there, no detours this time, the autumn wind blows, lifting my spirits with it, my affection for Jamie stirring. My mind dances like fallen leaves in the breeze. I re-enter what I call home, what's left of it, that is, as empty as it was when I left it, the same way I exited this morning, through the back patio door. I do note my weekly allowance money waiting for me, though, in an envelope on the kitchen counter. Same as every Monday afternoon, indicating that my parents have stopped by and that fresh groceries are likely waiting for me in the fridge and cabinets too. Besides that, though, nothing else seems to have been touched. Leaving the curtains open behind me to let the soft gray daylight in, I drop my backpack and jacket beside me before taking a load off on the nearest bar stool to begin removing my shoes as well. The house is quiet and still besides myself, so my parents are likely long gone again by now. Settling in, I shift to unpack my backpack, removing from it everything I took out of my locker earlier, and some other excess too. Finding places to store it all near the family computer in the living room, sure to keep what's most important handy for the days ahead. Once that's done, I take one last moment to reflect on the day I've had. Life isn't going to be the same from here, I don't think. Maybe now that I have Jamie, proof that I'm not a creep, proof that I'm not a fag, proof that I'm a young man like anyone else capable of sharing love with a similarly young woman. Things will get better. My mood will improve. My outlook will brighten. Hell, my motivation to take care of myself and some ambition for the future may even return too. When I think about Sarah and Thursday's lunch period now, I feel so silly and stupid in comparison. The contrast of meeting a girl as gentle and genuine as Jamie really has put things in perspective. I hate every part of me that was coerced into making a fool out of myself then, and I vow to never let a situation like that repeat. Really, I wouldn't mind one bit if I never see, hear, or even think of Sarah ever again. Jamie's the only girl in the sights of my heart now. She's the one I want more than any other, and it feels so natural and mutual. She is exactly who I've been waiting and hoping to meet for so long. Not just a pretty face and attractive body to lust for, but someone who is completely and wholly a perfect match for me as well. As Cass McCombs sang, she's not my dream girl, nor my reality girl. She's both. My dreams come true girl. I move with my backpack in hand to the living room couch, ready to chip away at what homework I have to do this evening. As I get comfy, I turn the TV across the room on to bring up some background noise in the form of afternoon cartoons. I flick between Nickelodeon and Cartoon Network to find that not much good is on right now. Makes focusing on the work I need to do easier, I guess. Even so, the prospect of cartoons isn't the only thing that may attract my wandering mind tonight, the thralls of love still fresh inside. Nevertheless, I pull out a binder that I left in my backpack earlier to start getting to it, willing myself to concentrate and do what I can. Some time mindlessly passes until I reach a decent stopping point. I close my books and look at the time shown on the cable box below the TV. 5:24 p.m. 3 hours since I arrived back home, I acknowledge, repacking my bag and moving toward the computer across the room. Of course, I haven't finished all the work assigned to me, but it's time for a bit of a break, I think. When my computer powers up, sat at its desk now, with the TV it's next to turned off again, the first thing I open is iTunes. When at home, I like to play music off of the program, but I don't have an MP3 player or even a cell phone to go with it accordingly. My limited allowance hasn't been able to afford either yet, nor am I really interested in that tech stuff anyway. When I'm out and about, I make use of a CD player I've had since I was a kid, helping a sense of virtue I hold in supporting my local music store rather than a corporation like Apple in the meantime. With iTunes, I simply use it at home to act as a library of digital copies of all the CDs I own, with an equal amount of less legally obtained music as well, to be able to enjoy everything I'm unable to find and afford physical copies of course. Today I feel reminiscent for one of my favorite albums purchased from Dave's Music since the band was shared with me a number of years ago, Granddaddy's Under the Western Freeway. In iTunes, I select the first song of the album, intent on letting it play all the way through from there. As it starts, I sit back in my desk chair, letting the weight of the words, backed by droning synth and guitar, penetrate deep into my soul. Hello, good morning, sir. The results are back. Now it's time to pack your things and go. Seems you came up rather short of the average sort. Now I must inform you've no reason left to remain here. Now surely you understand. Only gifted hands will receive the chance to touch down on fortune. Now we'll gather up your things, lead you to the gate, and you will go away and never attempt to return here. In my musical bliss, I navigate my way to logging onto Facebook. I do all I can to stay out of the way of social media by and large, but Facebook is the bare minimum I dip into now and then just to occasionally check in with my small group of friends. I'd say about once a week I'll log in for updates on plans and events around town. I miss MySpace, honestly. Facebook is much too plain in comparison. But I begrudgingly moved over from it last year after giving in to all my other friends leaving it behind too. Unexpectedly, I have a new friend request waiting for me this evening. It's Jamie. I scramble to click on it and accept the request quicker than you can imagine as Granddaddy's AM 180 plays. I check out her page for a bit of time, seeing what she's been up to outside of school lately, getting my eyes on as many pictures of her as I can, before my peripherals catch the indicator that she's online flash on. With brief, anxious hesitation, I click on it and select the option to send her a message. "Hey, it's Matthew," is the best greeting I can think of to type. God, I'm awkward as hell. Of course she'd know who's sending the message. On bated breath, I await her reply. I minimize the chat window and return to my feed to distract myself from my nervousness, but before too long, Facebook chimes to notify that a new message has been received. "Hey, heart," Jamie sent back. "To be honest, I miss you already." Jamie and I end up messaging for hours. Never before have I felt this special and desired from a girl. Nothing before has ever come close to how she makes me feel. I use this time amid other internet browsing to tell her as much as I can about myself, my interests, tastes, all of that. I tell her anything she wants to know about, honestly, and she returns the courtesy as well. Just before 9 p.m., I excuse myself to put together some chicken and pasta with Alfredo sauce for dinner. I eat the amateurly cooked food at the computer desk while I continue conversing with Jamie. Ultimately, I message her goodnight just before 11 p.m. "I'll see you tomorrow, Matthew. Next time, let's talk, winky face," she says, giving me a phone number to call. I give her the utmost thanks for it, promising accordingly that we'll talk over the phone next time. Shutting down, I return to the kitchen counter to prepare my backpack for tomorrow, making sure I hastily finish the most urgent of my homework before finally heading to bed. As I lay and get comfy, after stripping down to my boxers, although I toss and turn as usual, I'm eager for tomorrow to come for a change, just to be able to see Jamie again. Before I know it, I slip into the unconsciousness of sleep. A dream comes to me, and I find myself in school again, my elementary school. In a carpeted hallway next to a row of lockers, I wait in line behind the backs of other students ahead of me, moving up a few kids at a time as I near the school's bathroom area, the same way it came to me in English class this morning. On cue, as I remember it, an older kid, 5th or 6th grade, cuts through and walks with purpose, and perhaps fear as he doesn't turn his face to us at all, as he passes by my class's line. He disappears around the corner of the brick wall ahead, where the hallway opens up to an atrium and communal bathroom area, while I'm still 5 or 6 students away from being at the front of the line, just as I recall. After a few minutes more of anxious waiting, almost to the point of feeling like my sense of time was beginning to warp, Mrs. Sanders permits me to go on ahead and enter the restroom. I nod and pass my way from the front of my class's line, around the corner of the atrium's brick wall, and directly into the boys' room from there. As I recollect from my daydream this morning, the suspicious older kid is in the last stall, farthest from the entrance. I already know. Even so, I'm trepidatious and approach slowly with caution, almost as if not to wake a slumbering predator. With but a few steps left, I notice that the stall is closed now, when it's always been open as I've remembered it before. Puzzled, yet undeterred, I reach the stall door and push it open as the hinge slowly swings with an echoing creak. My eyes widen, seeing something totally unexpected. There's no older kid in the stall at all anymore. In his place where he's always been is a cold, lifeless mannequin, headless and closed in between me in the doorway and the stall's toilet. When it processes, unsettled, I follow the crimson scarf hanging from the mannequin's shoulders down to see a large kitchen knife resting in its open right hand. I don't know why. I really don't know why, but I feel drawn to take the knife from the mannequin. With an uncanny sense of imminent danger, I feel a need to take this knife, to defend myself from whatever put this mannequin in here. When I do, after the mannequin rocks a bit on its stand from passing the knife from its hand to mine, I hear the echoing noise of something light and plastic skipping across the tiled floor behind me. Hesitant to address it, knowing damn well that no one else should be in this bathroom with me right now. No one else has ever been in this memory of mine. I eventually gulp down my fear and turn to see what made that tick-tacking sound. I peer from the corner of the bathroom stall to see an unfolded black pocket mirror near the center of the bathroom floor, looking like it was tossed in carelessly from the entryway on the opposite end of the room. I take a single, cautious step to investigate, but as I do, my eyes dart up, alerted by the movement of a foreign reflection in the large bathroom mirror stretching across most of the wall across from the stalls. Pausing for a moment in disbelief, standing in the far stall where I'm at in the mirror, I see not myself, but a young, shaggy-haired child. Ghostly pale, brown short suit dirty and tattered, yellowing eyes, large knife in his hand as well. I've seen him before, but it's not me. Then why is he where I'm at in the mirror? I step forward out of the stall, and the dead-looking boy does too. The boy in the reflection mirrors each of my movements as I grow closer and closer to the pocket mirror on the ground until I'm standing over it. I break my eye contact with the ghostly entity to begin bending down to pick up the pocket mirror, but as soon as I do, I hear the most sickening snap I've ever heard. With a jolt, I look back up to see the unidentified boy in the mirror again, his head now sharply to the side, neck contorted as if painfully broken. In utmost horror, I stumble and catch myself with a single terrified step back. This can't be real. This can't be real. I notice that the boy is no longer mirroring my emotions in the reflective glass, both from him not matching my step back and how he drops the knife he was holding now, his hands frozen in a pained pose. Somehow, this mirror not being a mirror anymore is more terrifying than this ghost boy itself. Then, in a sudden moment, I hear a crack, and another, as I watch one by one in disgusted terror as the boy's limbs unnaturally twist and snap until they appear as contorted and broken as his neck does. My God, by the time it stops, the body of this child looks torturously mangled, as if the victim of the most violent rollover car crash you can imagine. The next thing I know, the boy actually steps toward the mirror on the opposite side of it, tortuously pulling himself toward the bathroom counter on crooked knees and limp ankles. I stare, petrified with mouth agape, as he, or it, approaches. But when he begins pulling himself onto the counter with an arm twisted backward, an audible, impulsive scream escapes my throat that echoes through the empty bathroom as I turn to run back and take shelter in the open stall I came from. I'm nearly too panicked to notice that the mannequin isn't in here anymore, nor was it ever visible in the mirror since this demon boy appeared in it. Luckily, though, the knife I grabbed from it very much is still here, still gripped tightly in my hand. Hastily, I pull the stall door closed behind me as I find a tentative sense of safety within it, leaving it cracked open just enough to still monitor what the disturbing demon boy is doing. By this point, it's on top of the counter, just about pressing up against the other side of the mirror. And then, the unthinkable, as if any of this so far has been thinkable, happens. The boy pushes up against the mirror with force, and the whole thing shatters. I jump at the sudden, loud crashing sound, the now broken mirror staying in place on the wall. That is, except for the few pieces of it that the mangled boy is directly pressing against. He's pushing his way through the mirror onto my side. What starts as just fingertips soon gives way to his whole hand emerging through the broken mirror, seemingly shredding its skin as it passes through the many razor-sharp edges of shattered glass, as what I actually see is just a bloody hand-shaped mess, more and more shards falling from the wall all the while. A demonic wail from a place of excruciating pain pierces through the ever-widening hole in the broken mirror as its jagged arm curls to pull the rest of its body through the shattered pane of glass. My hand on the stall door tightens in horror. More flesh lacerates with every inch he continues pressing through the broken glass. More and more blood spills and pools onto my side of the counter as he mutilates himself, passing into my reality. More of it gives way as he presses his head through next. Like its arm, it becomes gorily red and mauled as it emerges, the screams and cries coming from the boy furiously intensifying, as if an infant being born from a womb of serrated, shattered glass. And despite that, through all the mess of crimson and claret, those goddamn ghostly, dead yellow eyes pierce through. I can't take this anymore. I can't look anymore. Fearing what may happen if this maimed child reaches me, I pull the stall door shut and lock it tight. Moments pass as all I can do is hear now, so long as I remain too afraid to look any longer. The crying, the shards of glass grating against each other and crumbling onto the bathroom counter, until it all stops as something hits the ground with a heavy, gross thud. This boy-like being must be all the way through onto my side of the mirror now. That thud had to have been him dropping off of the counter and falling to the floor. All I can hear now is my breath hyperventilating, which I now realize I'm doing. My hands violently shake in terror as well. I peek through the gap between the stall door and its frame, just big enough to see a hand of this dark entity grab the largest intact shard of broken glass from the mirror within its reach, taking a grip on it as if it were a knife like mine. In turn, I duck back deeper into the stall and hold my knife ever tighter, readying to use it, not wanting to end up as disfigured as this boy is, fearing that to be the outcome when he reaches me. Slow, very slow, his steps softly and wetly squish, likely tracking through the blood that drained through the hole in the mirror he made, as this mangled monster nears my stall until at last they stop just short of it. My feet scoot back the last few inches they can as soon as a pool of blood, no doubt pouring from every inch of minced flesh torn from this possessed child, narrowly pushing his way through a fucking shattered mirror, begins to seep under the door. That's when I see that damn pocket mirror again, as if it's being carried specifically to me by the blood of this boy flowing like sludge along the floor. Just as it passes under the door, a childlike voice cracks and speaks for the first time. Dropped this. This? The fucking pocket mirror? That's what it's concerned about? I look down at it, in the blood on the floor, at my feet now. In its reflection, flipped open still, I can see the face of this bloodied, ghostly boy again. Just wanting this nightmare to stop, and not amused by whatever trick this demon is trying to play, I kick the pocket mirror away. Out from the stall, I'm cowering from fear my foot nearly slipping in the blood. I turn away and cover my head to protect myself, anticipating some kind of retaliation, when I hear him speak again. You don't want to see me? Who are you? Who are you? I yell back at it so loudly and coarsely that my voice cracks, but then, suddenly, all goes black, and through the void, through the most frightening, dreamlike void I've ever felt myself in, I hear an echoey voice answer back, childlike in pitch but demonic in tone, so I know it's him. You were just looking in a mirror, weren't you?